Story 1.
After years of marriage, my wife cheated to explore, but I outsmarted her with an epic surprise. My life is a complete mess. Right after I got back from work, my wife Lisa, who I've been married to for 12 years, began yelling at me. I was scared of this happening, but I knew it would eventually. To be completely honest, my wife had every reason to be mad at me. I was having an affair. However, to defend myself, she was also unfaithful, and she started it at least 6 months before I did. Even though I've known about Lisa's unfaithfulness for a long time, it seems like she just found out about mine. When I opened the front door, Lisa yelled at me, calling me a terrible name. From that moment, our conversation only got worse. Even though I could barely make out what she was saying, it was obvious that Lisa had found out about my relationship with another woman, and she wasn't happy about it. I couldn't find a way to interject or calm the situation, so I just stood there silently, staring at the ground, wondering how to escape if things turned violent. Once Lisa had cooled down a bit, she asked, "So what do you have to say for yourself? Why shouldn't I just file for divorce?" I replied softly, "First off, I know you've been having an affair for the past 9 years. So, I agree. Maybe we should get a divorce." "What? What's going on?" Lisa was shocked, her face turning pale. I reached into my briefcase and handed Lisa several photos I had brought. They revealed her affair. I wasn't sure how she'd react, but what happened next caught me off guard. Let me clarify, Lisa is very wealthy and could easily use her lawyers against me. However, instead of getting angry as I anticipated, she dropped the photos and began to cry. Then, with a look of deep pain and sorrow, she turned to me. Her next words completely surprised me. "I don't want to divorce you, I love you," she said, then hurried to our bedroom. Her response left me stunned and even more puzzled than usual. Lisa is the most beautiful woman I've ever known. I never imagined, not even in my wildest dreams, that we'd end up together. And when we did get married, I expected Lisa to grow tired of our relationship, and me, within a year or two. In our marriage, there was this funny thing about Lisa's family being super rich and insisting on a prenup. Naturally, I agreed, but there was one clause that almost made me walk out. Lisa wanted it in writing that we wouldn't have any kids, and after some thinking, I went along with it. But by the end of this tale, I ended up with 4 children. Can you believe how messed up my life is? Let me give you some background. Lisa Gra is my wife, and I'm David Todman. She didn't take my last name because her family runs a top-notch perfume company, Gravois Scent, and her name is a big deal in that world. Since she's a part owner, it made sense for her to stick with her maiden name. I wasn't thrilled at first, but it's worked out. Okay, over the years. Because we kept our own last names, a lot of folks don't even realize we're married, which gives me some privacy. I wasn't kidding when I said at the start of this story that I couldn't believe Lisa chose me. She's drop-dead gorgeous, always has been. Lisa's tall, almost 6 feet, with long black hair and these stunning blue eyes. She's got the body of a model, with slightly bigger breasts. Actually, she did some modeling when she was younger. I'm not too shabby myself, but I'm no movie star. I'm a bit over 6 feet, with sandy hair, and I try to stay fit. But compared to Lisa, I always felt like she was way out of my league. I met Lisa at a party hosted by my college roommate and his wife in the Hamptons. He was a successful commodities trader, and his wife Beth was close friends with Lisa from their time at Vassar. When I was introduced to Lisa, I was really impressed, like every other guy in the room. All the single guys, and even some married ones, were captivated by her, but she was way above my league. So I started chatting with other single women at the party. A friend once advised me to stick to dating girls in my league, or maybe even lower leagues, to avoid wasting time on someone who's not interested. It might sound like a cowardly dating strategy, and I don't completely follow it, but I do have my own version. I categorize women based on whether I think they're out of my league or not. Why bother pursuing someone who will reject me anyway? I like to keep it real. Unless there's a girl who's clearly out of my league, but known to be easy, then I might give it a shot. But that night, Lisa seemed to be constantly near me. At first, I thought it was just coincidence, but after a few times it was obvious she was into me. It was flattering, but also uncomfortable. I figured she was just slumming it, and when she got bored, she'd move on. I wasn't keen on being someone's project for the month. Maybe that was her plan, but I didn't let it get that far. Yet, after that party, Lisa kept pursuing me. I'm not bad-looking, but why would Lisa Gravois be interested in me? I'm just a software salesman. Don't get me wrong, I'm good at what I do. After 4 years with the same company, I was one of the senior sales directors, making a decent mid-5-figure salary. But compared to Lisa's $40 million a year salary, without bonuses, I felt like she was just toying with me. Maybe my lack of interest motivated Lisa, but eventually she convinced me. It took her 4 weeks to persuade me to go on a date with her. 6 months passed before we slept together, and a little over a year before we tied the knot. Our wedding was ridiculously extravagant. There were 600 guests, and rumor has it that it cost about $6 million. But to one of the Gravois heirs, that's just a drop in the bucket. Naturally, her family insisted on a prenuptial agreement. I know it was hard for Lisa to ask me, but I didn't mind. I understood why it was necessary, and besides, I made a decent salary myself, so I wasn't interested in her money. When I agreed to sign, Lisa was thrilled. She explained that her family would disown her if she married me without one, but she made it clear that she was going to marry me no matter what. Still, I couldn't help but wonder how long the marriage would last. According to the prenup, if we divorced before 3 years, I'd only get $500,000. I was shocked. I had never heard anyone say only before $500,000. But it got even better. For every year we stayed married after 3 years, I'd receive another $500,000. Or a share based on the percentage of the year we were married. In case of divorce, neither of us could claim the other's assets. But the best part was knowing that I got to be with the most beautiful woman in the world, and if things went south, I'd walk away with at least $500,000. Of course, the prenup also stated that we both agreed not to have children. Although I eventually accepted that condition, Lisa's parents weren't happy about it. But Lisa wasn't close to her parents. She claimed they favored her brothers and that they only saw each other during board meetings. Besides, she had already fought with them about having children years ago. It's no surprise we didn't see much of them over the years, and when they did visit, it was uncomfortable, especially for me, because they looked down on me. The initial 3 years of our marriage were fantastic. I genuinely felt loved by Lisa during those happy times. However, shortly after our 3rd anniversary, I uncovered Lisa's infidelity. Our marriage was quite unusual. Lisa's job required her to travel extensively. I'd estimate she was away about 1 week out of every month. In the early years, I joined her on her trips whenever possible. There were occasional stretches where she'd be home for 5 or 6 weeks in a row, but those were rare. Yet, whenever she returned, our intimacy was intense. My realization of Lisa's affair began with a newspaper photograph. Due to her status, she often appeared in the society pages, so I made a habit of checking that section daily. One day, I glanced at a picture from a party in Paris and almost missed it. It took a magnifying glass to confirm my suspicion. In the background of the photo, I saw someone resembling Lisa. With the magnifying glass, I confirmed it was her. Now you might ask, what's the big deal? It was significant because at that time, Lisa was supposed to be in Japan handling business matters for the company. Sure, there could have been various reasons for her being in Paris, yet I couldn't understand why she'd change her plans without informing me. I needed to learn more. Maybe it was just a last-minute change in her schedule, but I had to investigate. Initially, when we got married, Lisa wanted me to quit my job to travel with her. I declined, as I didn't want to rely solely on her financially. Eventually, she stopped asking. Marrying into a family like Lisa's comes with abundant resources, but I avoided using her money because I knew she paid close attention to finances. Instead, I used my own checking account, where my salary was deposited, mainly for buying Lisa birthday and Christmas gifts. It's not easy shopping for someone who seems to have everything. It bothered me tremendously, keeping me up at night and affecting my appetite. I felt compelled to find out what was going on, so I dipped into my personal funds and hired a private investigation firm. I made sure to choose a firm that the Gravois companies had never used before, one that had a good reputation from St. Louis. After spotting the photo in the paper, I noticed Lisa's schedule had her traveling much more than before. With the new schedule, she was away for about 2 weeks each month. However, I was puzzled because our intimate life remained strong. Lisa always appeared genuinely upset when she left for her trips and ecstatic upon her return. At times, I almost convinced myself I was being paranoid. About a month later, my suspicions were confirmed. I received the report from the private investigator, along with the painful photos. It was a new level of anguish for me. The report identified Lisa's lover as Gerard, whose family was deeply involved in banking across Europe. Gerard was the president of the family holding company. Gerard and Lisa had grown up together, and there was once speculation they'd marry. However, they split, with Lisa marrying me and Gerard marrying a woman named Teresa Apos from Greece, whose father was heavily involved in shipping. Gerard and Teresa had 3 children. According to the report, Gerard and Lisa ended things because he desired children, which Lisa adamantly opposed. Gerard's family threatened to disinherit him if he agreed to Lisa's childless condition. Additionally, the report revealed that Gerard's wife had passed away 6 months prior, leaving him free to pursue a relationship with Lisa. For 5 days, I wandered around feeling down, trying to figure out what was happening. It was clear that Gerard was Lisa's first love, and it seemed they had reignited their romance. I couldn't understand why Lisa hadn't initiated a divorce. It was all confusing because, whenever she returned home, Lisa showered me with affection. If I didn't know better, I'd think she loved only me. Not only was Lisa genuinely excited to see me, but our intimacy was incredible. You're starting to see how messed up my life was, and it was about to get worse. My initial reaction to the investigator's report was to confront Lisa and end our marriage. But after much thought, 3 reasons stopped me. First, I still loved Lisa. And when we were together, it felt like she loved me too. Second, our physical relationship was amazing. Lastly, there was the prenuptial agreement. From a purely financial perspective, staying married to Lisa earned me $1,370 for each day we remained married. After Lisa tried to entice me before leaving on another trip, I made up my mind. I thought, forget it, I'll stay married but I won't stay faithful. Even after deciding that, I had doubts about whether I could actually go through with cheating on Lisa. One day, while pondering my dilemma, one of my saleswomen, Thelma Johnson, popped into my office. Thelma was reasonably attractive, but nowhere near Lisa's level. Still, she had a great body and a friendly personality. If Lisa was an 11 or 12, Thelma was about an 8. "David, you've seemed off all week," she said. "Anything I can do to help?" Thelma was a great colleague, and I respected her sales skills. She had recently divorced her husband after catching him with the mail lady on their kitchen table. She ended up with a new table along with the divorce papers. Surprisingly, she didn't seem as devastated about the split as I expected. It wasn't the first time she caught her husband cheating. We had worked together closely for over 6 months to land the Her Enterprise contract, which secured our bonuses for the year. Despite Thelma's attraction to me, we maintained a professional relationship. Still, she was a good listener, so I decided to confide in her about my Lisa situation. "Yeah," I confessed. "I've been distracted. Just found out Lisa's cheating on me. Can't decide whether to divorce her or not." Thelma's response was quick. "Divorce her and move on," she said. "It's not that simple," I explained. "I signed a prenup with Lisa. Each year I stay married, I get $500,000. That's almost $1,400 a day, which isn't pocket change." I listed all the other benefits of staying married to Lisa: the luxury cars, parties, designer clothes, expensive watches, and travel on the company jet. Thelma acknowledged it was a significant consideration. She promised to think it over and let me know if she had any insights. The next day, Thelma walked into my office and shut the door. "I might have a solution for your problem," she said, taking a seat across from me. "What do you think I should do about Lisa?" I asked. "I think you should stick with her," Thelma replied, adding, "but with some changes." "What kind of changes?" I inquired, smiling. I expected her to suggest I stay married and cheat on Lisa. While I was leaning that way, I hadn't fully committed to the idea. Despite still caring for Lisa, her betrayal hurt, and I struggled with it. But Thelma's suggestion caught me off guard. "I suggest you remain married to Lisa, but have an affair of your own," she proposed. I raised my hand to pause her. "I've thought about that already." "No, my plan goes beyond that," Thelma interjected. "Let me explain fully before you kick me out." "Sure," I agreed, signaling for her to continue. "Go ahead." "David, I think you're struggling with this decision for 2 main reasons," Thelma started. "Firstly, despite what Lisa did, you still love her deeply. You can't picture life without her. And secondly, while you've considered having affairs, it doesn't fulfill a crucial desire of yours. You've mentioned wanting children. Having affairs won't satisfy that longing. Sure, you could get someone else pregnant, but that would complicate things and likely end your marriage with Lisa." "I agree with all that," I chimed in, "but I'm not seeing how it helps me solve my dilemma." "I believe I can offer a solution," Thelma said, smiling warmly. "What are you suggesting? You become my mistress?" "Technically, yes," she replied with a sly grin. "But I have something more in mind." "I'm not sure about this," I said, feeling uneasy. "Let me explain," Thelma urged. I nodded, signaling for her to continue. "You've known me since before you and Lisa got married," Thelma went on. "You may feel Lisa married beneath herself, but I never saw it that way. She's lucky to have you and she's foolish for risking losing you. But since Lisa's being foolish, I'm not passing up this opportunity. My dating history's been a disaster. I had doubts even before I married Fred last year. I sensed we weren't right for each other, but he seemed kind and loving at first. It wasn't until after we wed that I realized he was controlling and unfaithful." I nodded, allowing Thelma to continue. "I've always had feelings for you, but it seemed like you weren't interested in me romantically. We've been close friends for years, but you never saw me in that light. I accepted that and knew I couldn't compete when Lisa entered the picture. But now, with Lisa's actions, there's an opportunity, and I want to explore it before it's gone. So far, Thelma hadn't explained how her plan differed from just being a mistress. You mentioned wanting two things, dealing with Lisa and having children. Lisa's betrayal hurt you deeply, and you want to get back at her. Plus, even though you haven't talked much about it, you clearly want kids. I can offer both. After my awful marriage, I swore off getting hitched again, but I really want kids. So here's my proposal. I become your mistress and have your children. I know you don't love me like that, but I think you care about me. We'd keep our affair secret, so you can stay with Lisa while I have our kids. It's a win-win. Thelma's proposition shocked and intrigued me. It was messed up, but I liked the idea. Yet, I saw potential problems and started listing them. First off, thanks for the offer, I said gratefully. I'm flattered, and it's more generous than I could have expected, but there are issues. Finances would be complicated. Then raising the kids, their last name, and what if you decide later on that you want to tie the knot? I see the same issues, Thelma admitted, but let me try to tackle them. For money, I own my own place. I suggest we split kid expenses. Your name goes on. The birth certificate's as the dad, but for now, they'll use my last name. I don't plan on marrying again, but who knows? So, let's draft a contract. It includes a clause letting either of us bail with 6 months' notice if I remarry. You decide custody. If you end it, I get the kids, but you can visit. Either way, you're still recognized as the dad. We sat there, mulling over Thelma's proposal. Finally, I spoke up. I'm intrigued, but not ready to commit. Let's go on some dates to see if we click. Thelma agreed, and we started going out. First dinners and dancing, then dinner and shows. I enjoyed her company. She was funny and warm, beats waiting at home for Lisa's return from her trips. On our 5th date, we got intimate in the car. After our 6th date, Thelma suggested, "We're great on dates. Let's test the waters in bed." To me, Lisa and Thelma are both great, but different. We hooked up 2 more times before I headed home. Surprisingly, I didn't feel guilty about cheating on Lisa. Being with Thelma somehow boosted my confidence. The next day, Thelma came into my office beaming. After shutting the door, she leaned over my desk and planted a passionate kiss on me. Last night proved we're compatible. So, what's the next step? I grinned widely. Find a lawyer not tied to our companies, have them draft an agreement, then we'll take it from there. Thelma's smile widened. I know just the guy, my brother Tim. He's close to me, knows I'm a bit erratic, and warned me about marrying Fred. Off Thelma went, and I returned to work. As days passed, I thought less about the plan. Since Thelma didn't bring it up, I figured she might have had second thoughts. I wasn't going to push the issue. Plus, I leaned more towards just divorcing Lisa and taking the financial hit. It'd still be better than what most men face in divorce. Many deserve it, but some wives are the real culprits. In my case, at least I'd come out with a good chunk of cash. 2 weeks later, Thelma walked into my office and closed the door. She placed the completed agreement on my desk. Take your time reviewing it. Make any changes you want. If we're both okay with it, we'll sign in front of my brother, who will arrange witnesses and a notary. I was taken aback because Thelma hadn't mentioned the proposal since our night together, and we hadn't gone on any more dates. I thought the idea had fizzled out, but there it was, the agreement sitting on my desk. It's amazing how quickly I found myself considering the idea of having Thelma as my mistress and having kids with her. Again, Thelma's brother covered everything thoroughly, even things we hadn't thought about. One thing that stood out was what would happen to the kids if something happened to either Thelma or me. That sent a shiver down my spine. Tim's solution was clear-cut. If Thelma passed away, Tim and his wife would raise the kids if I stayed with Lisa. If I wanted to. Acknowledge them later, they'd be mine. If I chose to stay with Lisa, I'd still have full access to any kids Thelma and I had. If they didn't already know, they'd be told I was their dad. If I passed away, the kids would take on my last name, and my estate would go to them, managed as a trust until they turned 25. I was still mulling over my decision when Lisa mentioned on a Monday that her travel schedule would increase the next year. That sealed it for me. The next day, I asked Thelma to set up a meeting with her brother. The meeting with Tim was strictly business. Regardless of his personal thoughts on the agreement, it was clear he cared for his sister and wanted her happiness. "David, you're one lucky guy," Tim said, shaking his head. "I've seen pictures of your wife and she's stunning, and my sister's no slouch either." Man, I'm jealous. I chuckled at Tim's words, but Thelma shot him a look. "Tim, Gloria's beautiful, and you're lucky to have her." "I know, sis, but it'd be great if my secretary offered a deal like this," Tim joked, then quickly added, "I'm kidding. Gloria is more than enough for me." Thelma seemed content, flashing a smile. We refocused on the agreement. One clause outlined scheduling our intimate moments for when Lisa was away, but we adjusted it early on to align with Thelma's fertile days. That first night, Thelma looked stunning in her teddy. Her figure was curvy and inviting. Both of us were eager. At work, Thelma and I remained strictly professional. She informed others that she was done with dating and planned to conceive through artificial means. 3 months later, she called to share the news of her pregnancy. We kept our bed life going during the pregnancy as much as possible. When Thelma went into labor, I regretted not being able to be there due to Lisa's presence at home. However, once it was feasible, I rushed to the hospital to meet Thelma and our son Gavin. 18 months later, Jennifer was born. Thelma then asked if she could be a stay-at-home mom, confident she had enough finances to last 5 years until both kids started school. I happily agreed, even covertly covering her mortgage and utilities. Although we hadn't planned for more children, Thelma became pregnant again during one of Lisa's trips when she miscalculated her fertile days. Worried about my reaction, she called tearfully to share the news. Instead of anger, I reassured her of my love for her and all our children. Scotty was born while Lisa was away on a trip, allowing me to be present during his birth. I was overjoyed, feeling like I was on cloud 9 for days afterward. Before our third child's arrival, Thelma and I agreed we shouldn't have any more kids. We flipped a coin to decide whether I'd get a vasectomy or she'd get her tubes tied. The coin landed on heads, so Thelma underwent the procedure. Things were going smoothly until Lisa's travel abruptly halted. This disrupted Thelma and my plans. It felt odd to consider cheating on Lisa when she wasn't involved with Gerard anymore. The situation was confusing. Previously, everyone seemed content, but now tensions were rising. Over time, both Lisa and Thelma grew increasingly frustrated with me. Lisa wanted us to spend more time together, feeling we had grown apart. Meanwhile, Thelma was upset because we hadn't been intimate for weeks. Despite still being with Lisa, guilt affected my performance. I felt trapped in a mess with no clear way out. When I arrived home that day, I found out Lisa had discovered my infidelity. "I think you're right. Maybe we should divorce," I suggested, feeling relieved that this might resolve my dilemma. Lisa's reaction surprised me. She looked shocked and burst into tears. She expressed her love for me and her unwillingness to end our marriage before running to our bedroom. I followed her, finding her lying on our bed, crying. Sitting beside her, I hugged her tightly. "You were right, Lisa. We've been growing apart for years. I thought you wanted a divorce." "No, I don't," she replied amid sobs. "Then why did you bring it up?" I asked, confused. "I thought it would shock you into realizing we need to work on our marriage," she explained. "Oh," I responded, unsure of what to say next. "Listen, Lisa," I began, running my fingers through my hair nervously. "I've known about your affair with Gerard for a while. I thought you two were ready to commit to each other." "Oh God, no," she gasped. "Why didn't you tell me?" "At first, I was hurt and planned to confront you for a divorce," I admitted. "But I realized it would hurt me financially, and that I still loved you." Then someone at work suggested another way. Lisa struggled to process everything. Until now, she had no idea I knew about her affair, just as I was unaware of hers. "So you have a mistress?" Lisa accused, tears streaming down her face. "You awful jerk, get out and leave me alone." This situation was becoming more surreal with each passing moment. I couldn't understand why she was angry at me for having an affair when she started one before me. I saw it as a chance to leave quickly and spend time with Thelma and the kids. I thought things couldn't get worse, but I was mistaken. When I got to Thelma's place, she practically pounced on me without giving me a chance to explain. She pulled me into the bedroom, and we had closeness twice in 15 minutes. Afterward, when Thelma calmed down, we finally talked. "I thought you lost interest in me," she said softly. "With Lisa around all the time, I thought you didn't need me anymore. I was worried sick about losing you." I then told Thelma about my strange encounter with Lisa and her emotional outburst. This made Thelma cry, and my head was spinning with confusion. "Why are you crying now?" I asked when she settled down a bit. "Because it's clear she's still deeply in love with you and will do anything to keep you," Thelma replied. "That doesn't make any sense," I argued. "She told me to leave, and she's been happily cheating for years. How could she love me?" "I don't know," Thelma sobbed, "but something has changed, and she wants to keep you. It's not fair. She tossed you aside, and I want you." Feeling lost, I kissed Thelma, made love to her again, and then went to sleep. We made love once more in the morning before I headed to the office, hoping to make sense of the chaos my life had become. But as they say, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. That became clear when I found Lisa sitting in my office, looking unhappy. "Good morning, Lisa," I greeted cautiously. "I don't recall you ever coming to my office before, so why are you here today?" "You know why I'm here," Lisa snapped. We need to talk about your affair. I quickly closed the door and sat down. All right, what do you want to talk about? First off, who is she? Her name's Thelma Johnson. She used to work for me. Wait, did you hire someone to follow me? No, a friend of mine saw you kissing her in a restaurant the other day. They tried to follow her after you kissed her passionately but lost her. Are you planning to keep seeing her? Oh boy, was all I could muster. Well, are you? Lisa pressed. You're not going to like what I have to say, but you need to hear it. After I spill everything, I think we'll both agree it's time for a divorce. Sadness washed over Lisa's face, but she nodded. If you hadn't stopped going on your trips, we wouldn't be having this talk, I started. What do my trips have to do with this? Lisa asked sharply. I already told you I knew about your affair, I said bluntly. You meet up with Gerard during your trips, so while you were away, Thelma and I got together. You know what's good for the goose is good for the gander. My attempted humor didn't land. I decided since you were cheating, I could too. I tried to keep it to when you were away, but we had extra sessions when Thelma was fertile so she could get pregnant. You have a child, Lisa shouted, jumping up. Lower your voice and sit down, I insisted. No, we don't have one child. We have 3. You know I always wanted kids and you didn't. After spending what felt like forever trying to get Lisa to respond, she finally said, I need some time to think about all of this. With that, she got up and left. I figured it wouldn't be long before the company lawyers had the divorce papers ready, maybe a day or 2. During that time, I decided it was best not to risk Lisa's anger, so I stayed with Thelma. That night with Thelma was a relief. And yeah, we had a wild time, and yeah, I enjoyed every moment of it. But the next morning, I got a call from Lisa at my office. I thought she was just calling to inform me about the divorce papers, but what she actually said was the last thing I expected. She wanted to meet Thelma and my kids. Listen, Lisa, I took a firm stance. I get that you're mad at me, and we can debate whether it's justified, but I won't let you involve my kids in this mess. And I definitely won't let you mistreat them or Thelma. David, she said calmly, I promise on everything that's holy, I won't do anything to harm, insult, or disrespect your kids, Thelma, or you. I genuinely want to meet your kids, and I really need to talk to Thelma. I'll even have a qualified nanny to watch over the kids while we talk. After our meeting, if you still want the divorce, I'll stick to our agreement. I thought about it for a moment and figured meeting with Lisa might be the quickest way to settle everything. But I made it clear that if Lisa did anything to upset my kids or Thelma, things would turn ugly fast. All right, let me check with Thelma, I said. If she agrees, when and where do you want to meet? How about at our house tomorrow morning at 10? Thelma wasn't thrilled about the idea of meeting Lisa. She was worried that seeing them together would make me realize how much better Lisa was. I just brushed it off and told her it was the quickest way to get the divorce done and dusted. The next day, I drove Thelma and my 3 kids to my house with Lisa. Thelma seemed overwhelmed by the size of the estate, but the kids were thrilled about the swimming pool, game room, and ice cream bar I promised them. Instead of walking in as usual, I rang the bell. It was surprising when Lisa answered the door, as there were usually servants around during the day to do that. David, Lisa greeted with a smile. You don't need to ring the bell to come home. I wasn't sure what kind of welcome I'd get, I admitted timidly. Lisa introduced us to Helen, the nanny, who seemed friendly. Helen will take the kids to the pool. We'll be in the kitchen where you can keep an eye on them. In the kitchen, Lisa offered us drinks. I wanted a scotch but opted for Pepsi given the circumstances. Thelma chose water while Lisa poured herself wine. I couldn't help feeling it was unfair. If I'd known there would be alcohol, I would have ordered differently. Thelma, Lisa began, David told me you've been together for about 8 years. We've spent as much time as we could, Thelma replied nervously. David insisted we only meet when you were away on trips, but he'd often stop by for an hour or 2 to see the kids and attend their events. Lisa shot me a strange look. So you've been happy with David, don't you want a full-time husband? David is the best man I've ever known, Thelma asserted. He's a better husband and father part-time than... Is it something I won't like? We'll let you decide, Lisa said. Our agreement is to share. You're talking about a shock. I had come expecting to sort out the divorce details with Lisa, but now I was being told that both women wanted to share me. I'm not sure about this, I said, moving my chair back a bit. Lisa, you cheated on me for nearly 9 years, and yes, I cheated on you for about the same time, but you started it. I don't get why you don't want to be with Gerard all the time. If you divorce me, you're free to do that. Lisa began to cry, and Thelma punched my arm. Why'd you hit me? I asked, more confused and a little irritated. Because Gerard is dead, Thelma said. Oh, I'm sorry, I muttered. I didn't know. David, you're right. I cheated on you, Lisa admitted. Gerard was my first love, and I didn't get over him until I met you. He broke up with me when I told him I didn't want any children. I was crushed by his decision, but I refused to back down. About 3 years after we were married, I ran into Gerard on one of my trips. His wife had died, and he was devastated. I wanted to be there to help him through his difficult time. He had truly loved Teresa. Anyway, one thing led to another, and we started our affair. Yes, I did love Gerard, but I loved you every bit as much as him, maybe more. At the time of Gerard's massive heart attack, he was pressuring me to divorce you and marry him. I told him that there was no way I was leaving you. I loved you too much. Now, I couldn't stand it if you left me, David, and I know you still love me, even though you've had a family with Thelma. So, you know that it is possible to love two people at the same time. I realize now that I can't have you all the time, but I, like Thelma, want whatever you're willing to give me. I exhaled heavily and slouched in my chair. While some guys might dream of this scenario, all I could see was potential trouble. Every fiber of my being screamed that two women wanting the same man was a disaster waiting to happen. I looked from Lisa to Thelma and then back again. Both women's eyes held hope and fear, so I decided to act clueless. How exactly would this work? I inquired. Thelma then took out a notepad and went over the plan. The agreement was pretty detailed. But the main points were that Lisa would stay in the main bedroom while Thelma and the kids would have the other part of the house with 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. I'd spend Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights with Thelma and Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday nights with Lisa. Sundays, I could sleep wherever I wanted. Just because I'd sleep with one woman didn't mean we'd always have closeness. That would be up to each couple. But if one of them wasn't up for it, I couldn't go to the other. There were more rules, but that was the gist of it. I said I needed time to think. I wasn't sure about the whole thing, but both of them said it was either sharing or nothing. I wasn't entirely convinced. I thought maybe one of them would want me full-time, but then I started worrying. What if they were serious? Would I lose both of them anyway? I had a trip planned for the next day, so I said I'd decide when. I got back. Surprisingly, I managed to work despite having this huge decision hanging over me. But on the flight home, after finalizing a deal, I realized I'd already made my choice. I agreed to the arrangement. Thelma went to her brother to draw up the new agreement. He was shocked when he heard what it was about. After Thelma explained it, his first reaction was, "Holy crap, David, I hate you so much." I knew he was joking, so I joked back. "You could get a mistress yourself," I suggested, and got a smack from Thelma. "I wouldn't dare," Tim confessed, or Gloria would end me. The agreement seemed to be going fine until around 7 months in. I can't say my bed life has gotten a lot busier, but it's more consistent now. I'm having closeness at least 3 times a week, sometimes even 4 or 5. Since there was a nanny to watch the kids, Thelma came back to work at my office. At first, Lisa wasn't too happy about it, but she made things work by hiring Thelma with a higher salary and better benefits. Now Thelma works for Lisa and seems pretty content. About a week before the 7-month mark, both women caught me as I got home from work. They said there was an issue with the agreement that needed to be changed. I'm thinking, oh great, what now? Can my life get any more messed up? Turns out it could. They sat me down at the dining table and Lisa got straight to the point. "David, I want to have a baby." I was baffled, but then again, confusion had become my usual state of mind living with these two. I never would have guessed in a million years that Lisa would want to talk about having a baby. "I know I said I didn't want kids," Lisa admitted softly, "but seeing how happy you are with yours and how much they love you, I want that too." What could I say? All I managed was, okay, and apparently that was the right answer because both of them were thrilled, hugging and kissing me. But then Lisa dropped the bomb. "Also, David, Thelma and I have talked. We think it's best if I'm not married to you anymore." Now I was in panic mode. It sounded like they wanted me to get Lisa pregnant and then kick me out. I knew they were close, but I never expected them to fall for each other and want to kick me to the curb. "I want to make sure I understand," I said, turning to Lisa. "You're asking me to get you pregnant and then you both want to kick me out? That's not something I'm interested in. If you want me gone, just say the word, and I'll leave peacefully. But if you think you're going to keep me from my kids, you've got another thing coming." Thelma's voice shot up 3 octaves. "What? No, David, you've got it all wrong." Lisa rushed to explain, her face turning red. "I didn't explain it properly." "We don't want you gone, David," Thelma chimed in, rushing to hug me. "I love you more than anything. It would devastate me if you left." "I feel the same way," Lisa added, tears streaming down her face. "Well then, I'm completely lost," I said, frustrated. "I need a drink." I didn't care if it wasn't part of the plan. "I think we could all use a drink," Lisa said, taking my hand. Once we're calm, I'll try to explain better what we want, but David, know that we'll respect whatever decision you make. All right, Lisa, I said after downing my first scotch. Start with the baby. Are you sure about this? It's a big change for you. Having another baby wasn't something they discussed before, but seeing Thelma and I having fun with our kids must have stirred something in Lisa. Eventually, she felt a strong desire to have a child of her own. This meant we needed to adjust the agreement to let Lisa spend more time with me, especially when she thought she might be able to conceive. When we told Tim about the new change, he nearly choked. He kept saying how much he hated me until I reminded him what it was like with a newborn. It took 4 months, but eventually Lisa became pregnant and gave birth to a beautiful baby girl named Charlotte. She inherited her mother's eyes and my smile. Thelma and the kids absolutely adore her. As for the proposed divorce, it was just another twist in my chaotic married life. When Lisa mentioned not being married to me, it was just another part of the constant changes in our agreement. Specifically, Lisa wasn't suggesting an immediate divorce, nor was she suggesting a permanent split. During one of their many talks, Thelma expressed concern about the stigma her kids might face for being born out of wedlock. Lisa agreed and proposed a solution. With her substantial wealth, she could practically buy anything. The new plan involved me divorcing Lisa after our child was born. Then, I would marry Thelma, but Lisa would arrange the paperwork to show that we were married when our kids were born. Later, Thelma and I would divorce, and I would remarry Lisa. If you're confused, imagine how I felt. Some of you might be thinking about the financial aspect of the prenup. Honestly, it never crossed my mind, but Lisa had it covered. The agreement was written to ensure that the change in marital status didn't nullify the original terms. By then, though, I wasn't too concerned about the money. I was guaranteed at least $5 million from the original agreement, and my wise investments had grown that to another $6 million. It was reassuring to know that Lisa was watching out for my interests. Shortly after Charlotte's birth, I signed the divorce papers and married Thelma. Somehow, Lisa managed to update the marriage records to show my supposed marriage to Thelma. I asked her why we went through the ceremony instead of just changing the records, but she said it was a woman's thing. So I dropped the subject. I stayed married to Thelma for a year, then divorced her to remarry Lisa. Another year later, I divorced Lisa again to remarry Thelma. I can't explain why. They simply told me they both liked being officially married to me. The only downside of Lisa having a child was that her parents wanted to visit more often to see their new grandchild. This messed up our living arrangement, and I was pretty sure Lisa's parents weren't buying her excuse about needing her assistant nearby. Plus, I'd catch them giving me looks when they thought I wasn't paying attention. Lisa's mom seemed impressed, while her dad looked jealous. You're probably wondering what the kids thought about our unique family setup. When they were young, they didn't think much about it, but as they grow older, we'll tell them that their moms are good friends, and I've been married to each of them at different times. We'll keep it simple. When they hit their teenage years, they'll likely realize that our family is a bit different from others. Tim checks in with me about every other month for updates. I think he lives vicariously through me. I know our situation is messed up, but I love my kids and my wives. Thankfully, we have enough money to make it all work. As I mentioned earlier, my life is chaotic, but it's chaotic in a strangely good way.
Story 2.
I moved my girlfriend and me to California to follow her dreams, but she ended up cheating on me. My wife Alana and I were dining at a fancy restaurant when I spotted my oldest and closest friend approaching our table. I discreetly informed my wife about it, mentioning that Taryn Landis was coming over. I reminded her that he had been my best friend since 2nd grade, but advised her to be cautious around him given his reputation as a ladies' man. Thankfully, Alana replied softly, assuring me that she would be fine. I then asked her about Taryn, noting that he was the wealthy friend I had mentioned before. I nodded in her direction and rose to greet Taryn, who embraced me tightly, though the gesture felt a bit awkward in such a public place. Taryn expressed his joy at seeing me again, mentioning that it had been a while since we hung out. He seemed to have a particular interest in Alana and inquired if she was my lovely wife. He also mentioned that he had sent a gift when we got married in Singapore, hoping we enjoyed it. Alana, quite excited, brought up the pickup truck he had gifted me and offered a hug. I introduced her to Taryn, explaining their connection. Taryn then politely but firmly pulled me aside to embrace Alana. In her usual outgoing manner, Alana commented on his tall and handsome appearance and hugged him for a bit longer than I thought was suitable for a married woman. Curious about Terrence's presence in Daytona, I asked why he was there. Taryn explained that he had purchased a condo in the Dunes and was currently renovating it. He mentioned that he was staying at a local hotel and had come to the restaurant for dinner alone. Alana, always inquisitive, remarked on his condo purchase. expressing her surprise that he was renovating it since the condos were practically new. She couldn't fathom what needed changing. Taryn agreed with her, explaining that the bedrooms felt cramped to him, and he had taken the opportunity to buy a free penthouse. He planned to paint it and get new furniture. It was evident that Terrence was making an effort to impress Alana, who was particularly materialistic. Despite my decent income and savings, she seemed determined to spend us into financial trouble. We were celebrating our 3rd anniversary, but her attention was primarily on Taryn, which didn't escape the notice of onlookers who looked at me sympathetically. I suggested that we focus on each other again as the waiter brought our food. Alana didn't argue but intensified her focus on our steaks. Alana insisted that Terrence should join us, as my best friend was also her friend. Terrence hesitated, mentioning that he didn't want to intrude on our romantic dinner. However, Alana quickly intervened, instructing the waiter to set the table for Taryn, who was joining us for dinner. The waiter swiftly attended to it, and in no time, Taryn was seated at our table, dominating the conversation. I managed to win a game of solitaire on my phone, while he and Alana chatted about various topics. I didn't pay much attention to their conversation until Alana addressed me. She suggested that we had 2 spare rooms and that we should invite Taryn to stay with us, allowing us to catch up. Although she mentioned he could try her home-cooked meals, I suspected she'd order expensive takeout from fancy restaurants instead. I was taken aback by her suggestion and had my doubts about whether Taryn would appreciate her cooking. My first wife, Helen, passed away after 22 years of marriage. She and Taryn were close friends, and I never worried about their friendship because Helen was devoted and trustworthy. Sadly, she passed away suddenly from a heart attack 5 years ago. I mourned for over a year before meeting Alana at a charity event. Despite the 11-year age difference, we eventually got married, and we've been together for 3 years now. Alana had been divorced before, claiming her first husband cheated on her. I was committed to never cheating on my wife, and Alana knew it. It seemed that Alana had no trouble convincing Terrence to stay with us, and I suspected her revealing attire played a part in it. Taryn didn't have to wake up early for work, which was a luxury reserved for those without millions in the bank. Alana hadn't worked since her first divorce, and she had me sign a prenuptial agreement stating I wouldn't touch her money no matter how long we were married. This suited me fine, as I had a stable income from my investments and a good job. When I arrived home on Monday night, Alana and Terrence appeared even closer than they were at the restaurant the night before. Dinner was prepared and exceptionally tasty, but I noticed the trash can filled with containers from a local restaurant. Taryn and Alana were so engrossed in their own world that they didn't even notice when I left the living room, climbed the stairs, and went to bed. Their lack of attention didn't make me feel awkward. I was quite surprised when I got home on Wednesday evening and found Alana seemingly waiting for me. She was sitting on an expensive sofa, which, in my opinion, was a bit too close, especially for a friend. The man she had recently met was Taryn. Alana's opening statement was that we needed to have a conversation. Once again, I was taken aback. It was just a regular Wednesday, and I couldn't help but wonder how Taryn had worked his magic so swiftly. I knew he was skilled at everything he pursued, but this was incredibly impressive, and I knew it would cost me. Alana explained that Terrence and I had discovered a strong connection, one we hadn't intended for but couldn't deny. She informed me that she was going to divorce me as soon as it was possible, and that she planned to marry Taryn. She requested that I not try to dissuade her, emphasizing that she wouldn't give up her home and half her savings just because I couldn't stay faithful and Terrence couldn't keep his actions in check. I responded with determination that surprised even myself, stating that I would fight her every step of the way. Alana, in response, expressed disdain and labeled my reaction as typical of someone who's insecure. She clarified that she didn't marry me for my money and didn't want it when we divorced. Both Taryn and Alana believed that the divorce process would be smoother if she left with the money she brought into the marriage. She demanded to know if this was enough incentive for a quick divorce. In a sly manner, I replied, asking her where she wanted me to sign, knowing that money meant more to her than to me. Alana insisted that she would spend the next few nights with Taryn while they waited for his apartment to be painted, and she made it clear that she didn't want to hear any complaints, whining, crying, or grumbling. I simply nodded and turned, heading to the nearest bar. It's incredible how quickly a divorce can proceed through the legal process when all 3 parties involved are motivated, especially when one of them is quite wealthy. A few months later, I was a single man once more. The weekend after the divorce was finalized, I returned to the same restaurant where I had first met Alana and found Taryn sitting at a 2-person table. I walked over and joined him. Taryn wondered whether he should publicly praise me or wait for a more private setting. I expressed my lack of composure, suggesting that I didn't understand how he could be so cheerful. I mentioned that he shouldn't have proposed to Alana, as she could potentially come after him for various reasons like infidelity, breach of contract, outright deception, or just being rude. Taryn, in his usual calm manner, assured me that such things wouldn't happen. He suggested that I wasn't seeing the big picture and encouraged me to enlighten him. He also mentioned that he knew Alana and described her as stubborn, vengeful, and quite cunning. I asked Terrence with a chuckle whether he had felt differently when he proposed to her. I asked him to consider what the final straw was that made him decide to get rid of her. I admitted that I wasn't entirely sure, but I mentioned that it might have had something to do with the fact that her personal trainer was seeing her 3 times a week, and for some reason, it bothered me. I explained that the thought of filing for divorce, even for infidelity, was unappealing because she would have received half of everything plus alimony. I added that this was why I had turned to him for help, expressing my surprise at his ability to persuade her to ask for a divorce by Wednesday. I commented that it was incredible and noted that his persuasive skills must have improved over the years. Terrence confessed that it had more to do with how his portfolio had grown over the years. He explained that once she realized how much money he had, she was able to seduce him instantly. He admitted that he would miss her in bed and mentioned that making love to my wife had been one of the highlights of his life. I said, seriously? That her unique talent drew me into this whole scheme? I acknowledged that Terrence did an excellent job freeing me from that money-hungry woman, but I wondered why he didn't care about how she'd react to being left without ever getting married. I suggested she might figure out the entire plan given her conniving nature and cleverness. Terrence explained that he had the big picture in mind when he gave Alana a weekend at the Ritz, complete with a spa day, as an engagement gift. I retorted, calling him a fool and reminding him that Alana's personal trainer was now a masseuse at the Ritz, raising the possibility that she might have run into him. Taryn admitted that he had booked the spa for her and shared that he had visited her the previous night to see how delighted she was with his gift. He mentioned that he had a key to the room and that his phone was set up for video. I processed the situation and inquired if she had been with her former personal trainer, asking if there was a video and if she had cheated on him. I wondered if Taryn had been upset enough to call off the engagement. Terrence replied with a grin, stating that Alana was devastated by his unyielding stance, and it was the first time she'd ever done something like that. He assured me that it wouldn't happen again. I mentioned that I was on the same page as her in not being affected by the situation. Currently, Alana was out shopping, giving back the gifts I had given her, and there were tears and angry words involved. Taryn added with a big grin that I owed him dinner for convincing her to say she wanted a divorce on Wednesday. I acknowledged his efforts, saying he had saved me a lot of money and that I'd love to treat him to dinner because he had always had my back, unlike Alana, who didn't understand what real friendship meant. Story 2. I'm Frank Grimes, and my wife is Peggy. We've been married for 2 decades and have 2 children, Mike and Emma. I'm returning home after dropping off Emma at university, and I'm looking forward to discussing my wife's affairs over the past 12 years. Her latest affair is the most serious, and now that our kids are gone, she wants to leave me for her lover. As I turn onto our street, I spot our house with the lights on, indicating she's home. I pull into the driveway, get out of the car, open the front door, and walk in. My wife sits on the couch looking somewhat anxious, though I've never even raised my voice at her, let alone my hand. She glances at me and then at the 2 suitcases near the door. I focus on them too. Peggy, were you planning to leave with Tom, or did you intend to tell me about him? I point to a note on the table with my wedding rings placed on it. Frank picks up the note, drops my rings on the floor, and reads it. Dear Frank, as you can see, I left you for another man. It doesn't matter who. I love him, and he loves me. We are going far away. Please don't try to find me. We had a good marriage and good times, but we've grown apart in recent years. It's time to say goodbye. Frank reads the note, smiles, and puts it in his briefcase. Then he turns to me and thanks me for the note, saying it will make things easier. He mentions a video of me with Tom in our bed, and I'm bewildered. Frank reveals that he's known about my affairs from the start and had me under surveillance. He shares that he got rid of my lovers to maintain a stable family for our children and avoid financial consequences in a divorce. Frank, let me share a little story with you. Back in elementary school, my closest friend was a boy named George Vennon. He was a small kid who often got picked on, but I'd always step in to protect him, even if it meant taking a beating myself. Eventually, the school realized that messing with him meant dealing with me, and they didn't like the consequences. Our friendship continued through college and remains intact today. George's mother, whose maiden name was Gambini, belonged to the same Gambini family associated with the East Side. She had a desire to distance herself from the family's illegal activities, so they sent him to a regular high school. In college, he pursued business and law as his majors, while I focused on business and accounting. Despite his mother's objections, he later joined the family business. As my investment firm prospered, I started handling their investments, which brought a sense of respectability to their financial endeavors. In return, I made a significant amount of money. George had always mentioned that he owed me a favor, and I eventually called in that favor when I learned about your professional tennis player. George assured me he could handle it, and soon that player was no longer a concern. I became concerned when she appeared ill, so I fetched a bowl from the kitchen. Similar situations arose with your second and third lovers. Once you got involved with them, I made sure that Mike and Emma had a mother. If you hadn't considered leaving me, they would still be alive, she inquired with tears streaming down her face. If it was my fault they were gone? I explained that I believed Tom was also deceased. However, I genuinely felt relief that she was leaving me for Tom. The kids were now in college and didn't need her. Tom was alive and waiting for her to join him. The look of relief on her face was quite something. Did she really think I'd confess to being rude to 3 men and let her off the hook? She asked why I hadn't simply let her go with Tom. I clarified that before she left, I wanted revenge. I reminded her of our little dog, Fifi, and how I always cared for her. The meat labeled, "For dogs only," in the freezer came from her previous partners after their demise. So every time I saw Fifi do her business, it reminded me that her partners were nothing more than garbage. But that wasn't all. Glute and thigh muscle made great steaks, and she had even commented on how tasty they were when I grilled them. I asked her to think about the last time she had them. This time, she actually threw up, but she missed the bowl on her dressing. I continued telling her that now she knew. I pressed speed dial on my disposable phone, and 2 burly men entered through the front door. I informed her that these gentlemen would ensure her rendezvous with Tom, and she could spend the rest of her life with him, knowing she was accountable for the souls of for her lovers. I bid farewell to Peggy and expressed my hope that she would face the consequences. One of the 2 men grabbed Peggy's suitcases while the other escorted her to the waiting car. She didn't utter another word. As promised, they spent the rest of their lives together, driving in Tom's car for precisely as long as it took to reach the bottom of the old quarry, 10 miles out of town. Now they're all together in the same place, 1 cheating partner and 4 wife-stealing individuals. I love my life, and I have the proof that my beloved wife, Peggy, left me for another man on that significant day in August 2005. Story 3. My friend, an 18-year-old high school graduate, burst into the door of our cozy 2-room apartment, and I couldn't believe my incredible luck. Her lifelong dream of becoming an actress had always seemed quite achievable to me, given her undeniable beauty and exceptional talent. This was unsurprising, considering her vibrant cheerleading background and active involvement in various school drama productions throughout her school years. With her whole future ahead of her, the acting profession appeared to be a reachable reality. While my girlfriend had always been resolute about pursuing a career as an actress, I was still contemplating the direction of my own life. I wasn't particularly interested in college and was content working at McDonald's, allowing my girlfriend to take the lead. However, that day marked a turning point, filled with excitement. She shared the news that she had secured a minor role in a highly acclaimed blockbuster film. It was an incredible development, though she only had 2 lines to deliver. It felt like a monumental step toward fulfilling her dream. She explained that the lead role in this fantastic opportunity was being played by a regular customer from Hooters restaurant. After promising her a role and even booking a ticket to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I unquestionably believed in the opportunity that had arisen. Despite my naivety, I refrained from asking how she had managed to land such an incredible chance. In the evening, we gathered with friends to celebrate this momentous occasion. Each moment brought us closer to the allure and grandeur of Hollywood. Eager to have me accompany her on this journey, she reached out to a mysterious sponsor who generously purchased a ticket for me as well. Her happiness was infectious, and I had never seen her so elated before. Upon arriving in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we were met with opulence. Checking into a luxurious hotel for 4 days was a thrilling experience. While my girlfriend was occupied with her scenes for 2 of those days, I didn't mind. I made the most of the opportunity, soaking up the atmosphere of stunning beaches and basking in the warm sun. The remaining days felt like an uninterrupted vacation, filled with beach excursions, lively parties, and even encounters with celebrities involved in the film production. It was like a dream come true. All of this served as motivation that fueled our desire for the glamorous lifestyle that the film industry offered. Upon returning to Pennsylvania, we couldn't shake off the allure of that world. We knew that our path led to Los Angeles, where my friend could wholeheartedly pursue her dreams in the film industry. Her time in St. Vincent and the Grenadines had allowed her to forge valuable connections with influential individuals. Furthermore, she firmly believed that upon our return to Pennsylvania, we should use the $15,300 she earned to embark on this incredible journey. Using a portion of her earnings from the film, we managed to secure a modest apartment in Los Angeles. Brimming with hope and anticipation, we were stepping into a new chapter of our lives. Days turned into months, and my girlfriend faced the challenging task of securing significant film roles in this bustling city. Every morning, she woke up early and attended auditions in the hope of achieving a long-awaited breakthrough. Unfortunately, she mainly came across minor roles in local business advertisements that offered meager compensation, falling short of our expectations. As her earnings from the movie role began to dwindle, we found ourselves needing to invest in new clothing and photographs for auditions. Recognizing the need to support ourselves, I decided to take a job at a fast food restaurant. It may not have been glamorous, but it provided us with the opportunity to start earning money and sustain our livelihood. As our savings dwindled, I witnessed her hopes and dreams gradually fade in her eyes. Every evening, we returned home burdened by the weight of rejections and disappointments as she came face to face with the harsh realities and fierce competition of the film industry in Los Angeles. In our small Pennsylvania town, she had been considered the epitome of beauty, but in this sprawling city, beauty was commonplace. Months turned into nearly a year, and she still couldn't secure a substantial role for herself. The clothing she bought was now second-hand, and prospects for advancement seemed uncertain. Eventually, she took a job as a shopping mall model, a significant departure from our lofty aspirations. Nevertheless, it allowed, albeit with difficulty, for the bills to be paid. During this period, I found my own path in life as a fitness trainer. Balancing two jobs, one at a restaurant and the other training numerous clients, I aimed to provide stability and support our lives. We were consumed by individual pursuits, and as a result, we seldom found time for each other. Our dreams of success in the entertainment industry appeared to be slipping away, overshadowed by the demands of our busy lives. With each passing day, our dreams seemed to grow more distant. The unforgiving nature of the film and entertainment industry began to wear down my girlfriend's spirit, and I could only helplessly watch as she confronted the harsh reality that achieving success in Hollywood was far from the easy dream we had once envisioned. As time passed, her excessive spending drained our finances completely, and we began to struggle to make ends meet. I became increasingly frustrated with her for depleting our savings at an alarming rate. Finally, we managed to replenish our depleted savings. It happened unexpectedly when I was rummaging through her purse, searching for something, and stumbled upon a bundle of $1,500. Intrigued, I couldn't help but inquire about where she had obtained such a large sum of money. She appeared flustered, but explained that a photographer she met at the mall had invited her to take pictures at his lavish mansion. I couldn't resist asking why she hadn't mentioned it earlier, to which she replied that she had intended to but somehow forgot. Curiosity got the better of me, and I continued my questioning, wanting to ensure the legitimacy of her earnings. She assured me that everything was fine. However, as she spoke of her best photos and posing in various outfits for professional photographers, doubt began to creep into my mind. Despite our naive understanding of the industry, I couldn't ignore suspicions about the potential for exploitation or ulterior motives. After all, we had heard stories of people in Hollywood willing to pay exorbitant sums for almost anything. I grew curious and asked her to show me the photos. To my surprise, she mentioned that producers rarely provided copies, and it would take some time before anything would be known about the photo shoots. In my naivety, I accepted her explanation without delving deeper into the matter. This situation persisted for the next 2 years. She frequently returned home late at night, attributing it to earning money by frequenting clubs and occupying VIP seats. She often claimed that her involvement in these projects was limited to gatherings in the VIP section. In other instances, she explained that some producers preferred conducting auditions and shooting scenes during the nighttime. However, as her nocturnal escapades became more frequent, a sense of unease settled within me. Worries about her safety and the company she kept began to overwhelm me. She tried to allay my concerns, arguing that she wasn't the only one engaging in such activities and that many of her friends were compensated similarly. But suspicions persisted in my mind, causing me to question the reality of her actions. Over time, I began to take notice of the company she was keeping, which primarily consisted of individuals typically associated with the adult film industry. Yet, in my naivety, I believed they were simply models. She defended herself by explaining that she had no control over her work schedule, as producers dictated her whereabouts and responsibilities. I tried to logically assess the situation, convincing myself that some producers might genuinely prefer nighttime shoots. All of this seemed to align logically with my limited understanding of the industry. One day, while taking a smoke break near our apartment, a pivotal moment occurred that shattered my illusions. A man in a large SUV pulled up and dropped her off right in front of our house. In that moment, my views on her nocturnal adventures were called into question, leaving me stunned. Shocked by what I witnessed, I couldn't muster the courage to immediately confront her. Instead, I went inside the house and discreetly observed her through the blinds as she entered. Anxiety gripped me at that moment. With a determined decision to uncover the truth about her activities, I secretly planned to follow her the next Friday when she went out. On that Friday, she went on a date with her friends, and I quietly began trailing her. In the end, she ended up at a club with a long line outside. To my surprise, the club's promoter granted my girlfriend and her friends special privileges, allowing them to bypass the long queue and enter the establishment swiftly. In my quest for answers, I reluctantly had to bribe a bouncer generously to gain entry inside the club. I carefully scanned the crowd, desperately searching for her. Finally, I spotted her in the VIP section, chatting animatedly and enjoying drinks with her friends. It seemed to match her earlier explanation, and I lingered there for a while. As I began to grow tired and prepare to leave, doubts about the man in the SUV still nagged at me. But those doubts quickly vanished when I realized it was just an Uber Black, and I felt foolish for suspecting betrayal. After scolding myself for being paranoid, I convinced myself that everything was fine and returned to my normal routine. At the time, I worked as a fitness trainer and also dabbled in multi-level marketing, selling dietary supplements and insurance. Thankfully, my average earnings covered rent and my living expenses. When I took charge of managing my own finances, I couldn't help but notice changes in my girlfriend's behavior and appearance. She became more secretive about her financial matters, which raised concerns for me. Occasionally, she displayed aggression toward me, only to apologize later, claiming it was unintentional. Furthermore, she started concealing her finances and paid less attention to her spending, leaving me questioning her financial habits. Despite initially trying to brush these concerns aside, I couldn't ignore the significant decline in her financial stability. She began losing a considerable amount of weight, hardly ate, showed signs of excessive nervousness, and experienced sleep problems. She often slept for extended periods, causing me to worry about her well-being. In my attempt to address her health issues, I made sure she ate properly, attributing her behavior to stress. However, one night, as I woke up, I noticed she wasn't in our bed. Baffled, I followed the noise coming from the bathroom, driven by anxiety. To my horror, I discovered my girlfriend using a prohibited substance in the bathroom. I stumbled upon a stash of illegal substances, which caught her by surprise. In a panic, she attempted to hide everything but ended up spilling it on the floor. Her desperate actions to salvage the substances resembled a beggar clutching at scattered money. It marked a turning point in our relationship. Overwhelmed by emotions, both of us broke down in tears. She sincerely apologized and pledged to seek help and undergo rehabilitation immediately. It felt as though she had journeyed to Los Angeles but lost not only herself but also our connection along the way. Unflinchingly addressing her issues, she bravely kept her promise and checked into a rehabilitation center the very next day. Throughout her month-long stay at the clinic, she displayed genuine remorse and determination, clinging to the hope of overcoming this dark phase and resurrecting her dream. When she completed her rehabilitation program and returned home, she appeared revitalized and filled with newfound strength and resolve. A wave of relief washed over me. Her return was particularly significant as my birthday approached. We had a tradition of going all out for each other's birthdays, always striving to outdo ourselves and create unforgettable celebrations. One day she came home, casually tossing her purse next to me and went to the bathroom. Curiosity got the better of me, and a few days before my birthday, I decided to search her bag. To my astonishment, I stumbled upon a CD labeled Pilot. Excitement and anticipation surged through me. Without hesitation, I popped it into the DVD player, eager to discover its contents, anticipating it might be a surprise related to me or perhaps footage of a screen test she attended. I was utterly shocked and filled with anger as the unexpected truth unfolded on the screen. The video showed my girlfriend engaging in intimate activities with another man. It was an image I could hardly fathom. Overwhelmed by emotions, I stormed into the bathroom where she was showering, venting my anger and demanding an immediate explanation for her involvement in such actions. As she emerged from the shower, I noticed she was trembling, and she offered heartfelt apologies. She admitted that what I witnessed was initially meant as a one-time encounter but had spiraled out of control. I could scarcely comprehend her words. Confused and in search of clarity, I asked her how long she had been involved in this industry. Reluctantly, she confessed that it had been ongoing for over a year. My confusion deepened when she struggled to provide an exact count of how many times she had participated in such activities. Citing the frequency blurred the boundaries and made it hard to keep track. What struck me even more was that the dates and timestamps on the videos coincided with the period when I believed she was in a rehabilitation center seeking help, not pursuing adult films for financial gain. Determined to rebuild my life, I cut off all contact with my ex-girlfriend and focused on my career as a fitness trainer and my involvement in multi-level marketing. Unfortunately, the latter turned out to be a pyramid scheme that was eventually shut down by authorities, dashing my hopes. Undeterred, I decided to invest my savings in opening a gym. However, the high expenses in California posed a significant challenge. Opting to join the Planet Fitness franchise, I seized the opportunity to open a small gym in my Pennsylvania hometown. Before leaving California, wanting to be transparent, I reached out to my ex-girlfriend to inform her of my departure. Despite our breakup 6 months earlier, our connection remained strong, and our phone conversation stirred up emotions in both of us. She spoke of feeling abandoned, emphasizing that I had brought her to California and then abandoned her when she needed me most. Her words left me speechless, and I found myself immersed in memories of our shared youth and the dreams we once held together. Having made the decision to return to my hometown, I took the initiative to establish the Planet Fitness Center. As the business began to thrive, I also found solace in close relationships that brought joy and fulfillment back into my life. However, over time, I heard unsettling rumors that my ex-girlfriend had turned to a life of street-based solicitation to support her illegal substance use. Initially skeptical, I decided to investigate and discover the truth firsthand. What I uncovered left me utterly shocked. The person I once knew had become a mere shell, devoid of the vibrant soul I had cherished. About 2 years after the opening of my gym, the situation took an unexpected turn. Everything had been going smoothly for me. The membership at my gym kept growing, and it seemed like life was on a positive trajectory. But then an unexpected and devastating piece of news reached me. My ex-girlfriend had passed away while with a client, having consumed an excessive amount of a prohibited substance. The moment I received this heart-wrenching information, chills ran down my spine and I rushed home, unable to contain my emotions. I sat on the shower floor, overcome by uncontrollable grief and tears. To this day, I still carry guilt and never cease to wonder if I could have done something differently. Despite reassurances from my therapist, pain and regret continued to weigh heavily on my heart.
Story 3.
Discovered my girlfriend wanted an open relationship to cover up her existing affair. Hello, everyone. I'm Rick, 29 male. My ex-girlfriend, Taylor, 27 female, and I were in a relationship for 3 years, and at the end, we were planning on getting married. I made a shocking discovery. I first met my girlfriend at an organization I went to for a job interview. She was one of the applicants. While waiting for the interview, we broke into a conversation and exchanged our contacts while leaving after the interview. Ideally, I thought I would get the job because I was very qualified. Unfortunately, I didn't clear it, but she did. We soon started chatting, and she helped with any interview leads and shared the tips that helped her crack the last one. Luckily, I got one a couple of months later, and we became friends. Aside from being in the same career field, one of the things that attracted me to my girlfriend was her witty conversations, sense of humor, and the energy she gave off. When I met Taylor, I had no intention of falling in love with her. It just happened. I only asked for her number because she looked like the kind of witty friend I'd love to have in my circle of friends. To be more specific, we exchanged numbers to keep each other posted about the job we were interviewing for. Eventually, as we got closer, we fell in love and started dating. We dated for almost 3 years before I learned something that destroyed our relationship. During the years we dated, Taylor and I lived together for a year, but after 1 year, she said that she wanted to shift back with her best friend. Her reason was that we would anyways be living together after the wedding, hence she wanted to spend her bachelorhood with her best friend. I didn't see that as a problem and gladly gave her the space she needed. She visited me on weekends and stayed over some days, so basically she was living both with me and her best friend. She kept shuffling from my house to hers. We were a beautiful power couple, and even without telling people we were dating, they could quickly tell from how we acted whenever we were out together. In the past, I had been in a committed relationship once. After the relationship ended badly, I decided to take a break, but everything changed when I met Taylor. Throughout our relationship, I supported Taylor in everything she did. I encouraged her to take courses, work harder, and invested my all in her. From the second year of our relationship, I knew she was the woman I would marry because she ticked all the boxes. She knew how to care for me and love me, and she also handled other areas of our relationship well. The first year we lived together, we split bills and took care of everything together. But after she started shuffling between my house and her best friend's house, the splitting of bills stopped. On her anniversaries and birthdays, I gifted her the things I knew she loved just to make her happy. To be honest, she was my priority all the time. I sacrificed a lot for her and tried everything I could to keep our relationship happy. I didn't do all this because I was desperate to be with her. I did it because I valued our relationship and wanted it to be all around peace and happiness for us. I remember this vividly. Shortly before Taylor started shuffling between my house and her best friend's house, one night as we were watching a movie, she asked a weird question out of the blue. She asked for my opinion on open relationships. I instantly remarked that people who had open relationships were not in love with each other and laughed. She took offense and tried to counter my statement. She went on and on to tell me that she knew many couples in open relationships and they loved each other so much. She told me that I sounded archaic. I didn't take it seriously and changed the topic. Another day we were having dinner together and suddenly she asked, "What do you think about us having an open relationship?" Initially, I thought she was pulling my leg, but after I saw her facial expression, I knew she was serious. There and then, I kicked against the idea of having an open relationship and told her I'd prefer to be single than to have an open relationship. After that day, she never brought it up again, and I didn't think about it too. Even before our relationship started, I told Taylor that the thing I hated most in a relationship was a cheating and lying spouse. I would not forgive her if she ever cheated on me. I repeatedly said this because of the wounds I got from my previous relationship. I did not want a situation where I would give my heart to her and she would shatter it by cheating on me. This was the main reason I also ensured that our relationship would not be ruined from my end. Soon after Taylor moved out, I noticed some changes in her attitude. It began with her standing me up on our dates. We had the rule of going out every Friday evening, whether going for a walk in the park, eating at a food truck, or going to a fancy restaurant. We always went out every Friday. Because she wasn't living with me anymore, the deal was for her to come to my apartment, and we'd go out together. When it all started, she would keep me waiting for hours, and if I kept calling her, she would either not take my calls or ask us to reschedule the meeting because something urgent came up. Other times, she would cancel on me a couple of minutes before our meeting time and claimed she thought she had sent me a text about the cancellation. When that happened, I should have been smart enough to know something was wrong. Instead, I bought all her excuses and encouraged her to work less since most of her excuses had to do with her office. Even though it was annoying when she canceled almost all the time, I didn't take it to heart because I was the understanding boyfriend. Fast forward a year after she moved out, Taylor and I became so distant. Despite living in the same town, it felt like we were in a long-distance relationship. She got promoted at her office, which took even more of her time. She started traveling a lot with her team, and we barely saw each other. Whenever she was back in town, things got so bad that we only relied on WhatsApp messages. Sometimes I would even send her messages, and she would not read them, but she'd continually make WhatsApp updates. When it got to the extent that I could not take things anymore, I talked to her best friend to talk to her, but that didn't yield any results. Eventually, I confronted Taylor about our diminishing relationship, and she claimed work was taking much of her time. This excuse was funny because I knew her job wasn't meant to take up her time like that. Even freelancers working with different clients simultaneously had more time than Taylor did. After the confrontation, Taylor promised to improve, and for 2 months, she did. She called more often, responded to my messages on time, and even updated me on her daily activities. She even started spending the weekend with me after a long time of not visiting my house. Her changes made me happy, and I was beginning to feel like we were back on track. I didn't want to sound like an enemy of progress, so I didn't ask her to find another job. Instead, we agreed on how to cope with her busy schedule. When this happened, I felt it was time to finally settle down. Taylor had never mentioned anything about getting married, and I believed she wanted me to bring up the topic on my own as the man. So I got an expensive engagement ring and planned to propose to her the next time she came over for the weekend. That weekend, when she came on Friday as she usually did, we went to a fancy restaurant to eat, and I took the ring with me. But something within me didn't allow me to do it. I could not propose to her there as I intended. Later that night, when we returned home, she fell asleep in the middle of our Friday movie night. I knew she was tired because she had been complaining of tiredness since she came over to my place. Out of love, I took her to the bedroom and tucked her in bed. When I returned to watch the movie we were watching, I noticed her phone was stuck in the old couch seat, and I pulled it out for her. While I was watching the movie, I thought about going through her phone, but I resisted it. During the early stage of our relationship, we used to have access to each other's phones because we had nothing to hide. So, after contemplating for a while, I grabbed her phone, but it required fingerprint access. Sincerely, I was too lazy to return to the room to get her fingerprint, and I was trying as hard as possible to not be a nosy partner. But my curiosity got the best of me, and when I finally had access to her phone through her fingerprints, I was shocked at what I saw. The very first place I went through was her call log. Apart from me and her best friend, I wanted to see if she was talking to someone else regularly. I didn't even go down her call log when I saw a contact saved as Daddy. It was really confusing because her dad was late, and she wasn't close to any of her older family members except her mom. I know it wasn't my number either because my contact was saved with my name just above it. She had spoken to Daddy thrice during the day and a few minutes before arriving at my apartment that evening. Out of curiosity, I went through her WhatsApp to find the contact, and it was right there at the top of her messages. There were messages from Daddy she had not read yet because she had slept off. When I opened the message, I realized they had been communicating the whole evening, even while we were at the restaurant. At first glance, I could tell that everything was wrong with their chat because of the emojis they used. So I decided to start from the beginning of their conversation. I was shocked to find out that Taylor and her boss were in a relationship. She was in another relationship while we were still together, and according to what I read, she told her boss she was in an open relationship with me until marriage. Their conversation dated way back, and I had goosebumps when I found out their relationship started around the same time she started asking questions about open relationships. Not just that, Taylor had an abortion for him once, and she was greatly compensated with money, and part of her compensation was the promotion she got. I was heartbroken and wished I could unread everything I saw. Another heart-racking part was that they mentioned me in some of their conversations and said all kinds of things about me. As I continued to read, I found out that it was her daddy's idea for her to start spending the weekend with me. She didn't even want to. He asked her to do it so I wouldn't get jealous that someone else was taking more of her time. After a lot of persuasion from him, she agreed. He also explained that he wanted her to get busy with me so he could also have time for his own family. He said his family was already complaining about him, and his wife was beginning to suspect that he was cheating on her, and he didn't want that. That was the most ridiculous thing I had read, and it hurt to find out that the calls, messages, and updates did not come genuinely from Taylor. That night, I sat on the couch unsure what to do. I thought of various ways of confronting and exposing her. At one moment, I thought of waking her with a bucket of cold water and yelling at her to explain everything, but I had anger issues and I knew that idea would take me to jail for physical assault. So, I went for a walk to clear my head and think properly. Before leaving the house, I exported the entire chat and sent it to myself, then marked the last messages unread. After hours of walking with no destination, I came up with an idea similar to the one I had on Reddit. It was very difficult to pull this through, but I did it. The whole weekend, I kept my cool like nothing had happened, and before she left on Sunday evening, the following week, I went to her office on a Tuesday. Since it was a corporate organization, I was asked to wait for her. While I waited, I handed out printed copies of the chat between Taylor and her boss to everyone I bumped into, including the receptionist. By the time Taylor came to see me, many people were holding the copies and they were in shock. One of the men in her office immediately shouted, "I knew it! I knew it! I told you something was going on, but you all said I talked too much." Taylor was confused, and when she asked what was going on, I handed her a copy. As soon as she glanced through it, she flung the copy and tried to hold me. With what I had done, I knew the news would spread to HR, meaning she would no longer have a job. I loved how everyone looked at her as I walked out of the room and as she ran after me. Just as I was about to enter my car and drive off, she ran, held my arm, and said she could explain. Shortly after I arrived home, she dashed out of a taxi without shoes and came to beg me. She kept banging on my house door, and because of this, the neighbors came out. It was so annoying, but I used the opportunity to throw out the few things she left at my place through the window, and I told her to go and be with her daddy. She still refused to leave, and her best friend arrived after an hour. Her best friend tried to speak to me from outside, but when I didn't respond, she packed all the stuff I threw and dragged Taylor inside her car. Since then, Taylor has been blowing up my phone, and she has literally called all my friends to help her beg me to take her back. It's so brave of her to think we could ever be together after everything she's done. Now the deal is, despite everything she has done, I still love her, but I do not want to be with her. I've been trying to get over everything and move on, but she has been begging me to see and talk. I know it's stupid, but I have fixed a meeting with her for next week, and I'm confused about what to do. I can't get over the memories we shared in my apartment. Almost everything in it reminds me of her. My heart wants her, but being with her will be disastrous for me. Has anyone had a similar experience? I look forward to your comments. I think you know exactly what to do. She was seeing someone else behind your back, and she even managed to get pregnant from this man and have an abortion. Not only that, but you even said it yourself, you'd rather be single than a man in an open relationship. So what are you so confused about, OP? Why would you stay in a relationship with someone who has cheated on you? Update 1. Hello everyone. Thank you for your comments. I'm glad to know others have been in the same situation. You're all right, even if I agree to give Taylor another chance, she will cheat on me again. Women like her are never content and will always have an excuse to cheat. 2 days ago, Taylor and I met as we had scheduled, and immediately she saw me, she started crying and making a scene. I was even embarrassed because we were at the park, and I tried to pretend everything was fine after we had settled. She told me she had never believed in monogamy from the onset, and she thought I was the kind of man that would love an open relationship as our relationship progressed. But when she suggested that we have an open relationship and I kicked against it, she was disappointed and decided to do her thing. It was funny for her to think I would never find out about her relationship. She even said she had no intentions of telling me, and she intended to stop once I proposed to her or married her. But nothing she said matched what I had read on her WhatsApp chat. When I asked her about the abortion, she started sobbing and apologizing. She said the pregnancy was mine, but she needed the promotion badly, so she lied to her boss and claimed she was pregnant for him because she knew he wouldn't let her keep it. In order to terminate the pregnancy, she negotiated a promotion and a huge amount of money to travel to another state for the process. At this point, I didn't even know if she was telling the truth, and I was really pained that she intended to fool me until we married. She, of all people, knew how I was protective of her body. She knew I would never want to share her with anybody, yet she cheated on me with her boss. Someone here commented that I asked her what she wanted, and when I did, she said she wanted us to return to the way we used to be. I told her that was impossible because she had ruined her only chance, and no matter how much I loved her, we could never return to the way we used to be. Hearing this, she stood up immediately and made a scene. She started yelling at me, called me names, and said she had been putting up with me for years, so the least I could do was stick with her. She said she had been doing me favors and it was her turn to collect. Then she walked out on me. By this time, I didn't even know she had been fired from work and her boss had been fired along with her. She desperately wanted me to take her back, and that's why she tried everything possible. Also, I recently learned that her best friend knew she was having an affair but didn't say anything. They collaboratively played me for a fool and kept me in the dark. Just this evening, she called and said she'd be coming over tomorrow, and we are not breaking up until she says so. I have never seen her act this way, and it's terrifying. I told her not to come, or I'll call the police. Whatever happens, I'll make another update soon. Why would she want to stay with you if she's been putting up with you? Like, why would she want to stick with you if she can hardly stand you and if she loves open relationships so much? Why would she suddenly change her mind once marrying you? Of course, she'll still cheat on you, but she wouldn't even consider it cheating. According to her, it's not cheating if it's an open relationship. Update 2. Hello everyone, sorry it took so long for me to make another update. Something happened and I had to take care of that before making another update. So, Taylor came over like she had said when we talked, and I officially told her it was over between us. She laughed. She said she had no regrets about cheating on me because she did everything for her career and she saw no harm in it. This is how I knew she would keep cheating on me even after we married. I was so pissed, so I grabbed her arm and tried to throw her out of my apartment, but she pushed me violently. When I fell and hit my arm, she pulled a mega hammer out of her purse and started destroying things in the house. She destroyed the TV, my new laptop, and several other things. I called the police to report harassment, and just as she was tearing up my apartment, the police drove in. Also, one of my neighbors had called the police when she heard the argument and loud crashes in the house. Even she could not believe that Taylor would act that way. Eventually, the police came in and Taylor was arrested. Because I missed my step when she pushed me with force, I fell and broke my left arm. After healing my arm, I sued Taylor in court. The first reason was for a refund of the money I spent in the hospital, and the second was for her to pay for all the damages she made in my apartment. When we went to court, the judge asked for pictures of the damages and my hospital bills, and everything amounted to almost $7,000. I could not even replace them because it was so expensive. After the judge was done talking with me, she turned to Taylor and asked her some questions. Overall, Taylor admitted to damaging things in my house, and she claimed she broke my laptop and destroyed other things as her payback for making her lose her job. The judge was furious and passed judgment against her. As I make this update, Taylor has been ordered to replace my laptop, fix the appliances she destroyed, and she has started refunding the money I spent at the hospital. Now she knows we can never be a thing again, and that has made her so miserable. Worst of all, she cannot get another job in our town because she has been blacklisted. I feel so fulfilled that she has to go through all of this misery and has gotten what she deserves. I say thank you to everyone that commented on my main post. I appreciate all of your comments. Wow, that's some seriously unstable behavior. And why do that? It only costs her in the end, not only money, but it cost her her job that she apparently worked so hard for. She worked hard, all right, worked her magic and pushed it up right onto her boss. You were collateral damage, Opie. I'm sorry. What do you make of this? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and thank you for joining us today. Be sure to like and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time.
Story 4.
I've always seen my wife as my closest confidant, someone dependable and trustworthy. So it was a shock when she took a wrong turn and faced the consequences. Tonight, I hoped for a bonus, but I had doubts. It was the first time in 3 years I wore my dark blue tuxedo, looking sharp yet feeling out of place. Instead of relaxing in my favorite chair with a drink, I found myself at a fundraiser with colleagues and spouses, a big social event in our small Midwest town. I'd asked my wife to dress up, and she certainly did, maybe too much. She looked stunning but overly tempting. At 35, she was at her peak beauty, turning heads as she descended the stairs in a revealing maroon dress. Despite her allure, she was mine, and I made that clear. While I'd rather be home, my wife seemed comfortable mingling with the city's elite. She had a natural charm, drawing people to her effortlessly. As I returned from the bar, I found her engrossed in conversation with Senator Thomas Norberto, a charming figure often compared to Tom Selleck. His presence seemed to captivate her like never before, leaving me feeling like a bystander to her infatuation. Noticing they ignored me, I stepped in, politely reminding the senator of my seat. He continued chatting with my delighted wife, so I intervened more assertively, placing drinks between them until he got the message. When he finally acknowledged my presence, he announced he'd leave to find his seat, dismissing me. Fuming, I returned to my place, calling him foolish. My wife defended him, claiming I was rude to a senator. I reminded her of our relationship boundaries, but she rolled her eyes, a move I always disliked. Avoiding a scene, I dropped the matter. Dinner passed, and the band resumed playing. I invited my wife to dance, but she refused, leaving me disappointed. While I chatted with others, I kept an eye on the senator, who eventually left for a veranda. Concerned, I found him there, arm around my wife, engaged in a serious conversation. I intervened, but someone stopped me, warning not to mess with the senator, forcing me out. "I'm warning you, that's my wife he's touching," I gritted out as I was pushed back into the ballroom. Demanding he retrieve her, I threatened a scene. He cursed quietly, turning back to the senator. Hess returned, appearing flustered, claiming ignorance. I grabbed her hand, leading her out. The ride home started in silence, but I knew it wouldn't last. She unleashed, accusing me of humiliating her. I defended my boundaries, reminding her of our marriage. "You're being possessive, crossing a line. You acted like a love-struck teen," she retorted, blushing. She remained silent, conceding my point. Our tension affected the kids, dinner becoming awkward. On Wednesday, she insisted on a serious talk. Never a good sign. It ended poorly. She revealed plans to attend another fundraiser with the senator, calling it a non-date. I objected, questioning the appropriateness. She denied any wrongdoing, claiming innocence. I challenged her definition of a date, citing a double standard with her friend Angie. Her reaction confirmed my suspicions. She had issues with Angie, known for her charm. "It's completely different, you know that," she argued, claiming a date with a U.S. senator wasn't the same as a regular date. "There's a big distinction, right? Hess, you can't go out with another guy. We're married, remember?" I reminded her, emphasizing our vows. "You don't own me, Reggie, even though we're married," she retorted. "I can do what I want." "I'm not saying you're my property, but you're the mother of our kids. I don't want to break up our family," I pleaded, hoping to reach her. "You're being ridiculous," she dismissed, refusing to acknowledge the seriousness of the situation. I was shocked when Hester appeared in a stunning white gown for her date. Our kids were amazed, asking why she was dressed up. She struggled to explain, but I intervened, bluntly stating the truth. As the doorbell rang, I confronted her with a choice, him or us. She opened the door to a security guard, revealing a black limo outside. "Remember to behave for Daddy," she said before leaving. I assumed it was her, stunned momentarily before focusing on my kids who needed attention. Drowning sorrows in booze wasn't an option. I planned a few FaceTime calls, one to my parents, one to hers. The kids enjoyed chatting with their grandparents. Starting with Hester's parents, I anticipated her recent actions would upset them. We laughed until Hester's absence was noticed. "Where's my daughter, Reggie? Have you hidden her?" my mother-in-law joked. I softly explained Hester was on a date with Senator Thomas Norberto, expecting her return the next day. Shocked, my in-laws couldn't believe I let her go. I tried reasoning with her, emphasizing family neglect, but she seemed convinced it was acceptable. The kids took over the conversation, a welcome distraction. My mother-in-law urged communication and patience. Later, I called my parents, receiving less sympathetic advice from my mother, who recommended a lawyer. After a few calls, I ordered pizza, watched a Disney movie with the kids, and struggled to sleep, distracted by ESPN. In the morning, I made pancakes and bacon, reassuring the kids their mom would return soon, even if it was uncertain. There was no rush to come home after spending the night with another man. The black limo arrived in our driveway around 1 p.m., catching the attention of our kids and neighbors. Usually they'd rush to greet their mom, but this time they stayed put, disappointed by her lackluster appearance. She still wore the same dress from the night before, now wrinkled and tired-looking. I sat in the living room as she entered, showing no eagerness to greet her. "Hey," she greeted, acknowledging our night apart. "Looks like you and the kids managed without me," I replied sharply. She headed upstairs, asking for rest and a shower. I raised my hands in mock surrender, realizing our relationship was over. Now, I focused on making things easy for my kids, avoiding becoming a weekend-only father. The question lingered. Could I stay until the kids graduated high school? When Hester finally came downstairs at 7 p.m., I'd already made dinner. I mentioned leftovers in the fridge, receiving a faint smile. The kids sensed tension and kept their distance. Alone, Hester accused me of poisoning their minds. I denied it, highlighting the impact of her actions on them and our neighbors. "I didn't break up our family," she defended, shifting blame to me. "It's up to you. If you can work on your ego issues, we can heal and keep our family together. But if you continue being petty and nasty, we'll have to go our separate ways, and you can be Mr. Part-Time Dad," she warned, catching me off guard. I had expected regret, not resistance and anger. "It's 1 in the afternoon, you idiot," I retorted. "You couldn't get enough last night? Needed a half-day fling, huh?" She paused, avoiding my gaze. "We can get past this and go back to how things were. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. But I needed this for myself, and I don't regret it," she said, unapologetic. "That's a terrible apology if that's what it is," I remarked. "You're only sorry for hurting me, not for anything else." "It was amazing for you," she said defensively. My response matched her conviction. "Your actions betrayed our vows and our family." I recounted how surprised she was when I found her in our guest bedroom. "We can't move forward unless you try," she pleaded. "No, it's too late now," I clarified, locking her out of the room. I slept soundly that night, exhausted from 48 hours of tension. The next morning, I continued our Sunday brunch tradition, making Belgian waffles. "Mom looks rough, like she hasn't slept," Elise observed as we sat down to eat. "Maybe you should go out more on Friday nights," I suggested. Hess burst into tears and fled to the bedroom, leaving the children puzzled. "Did I say something wrong?" Elise innocently asked. "No, sweetheart, Mommy probably just missed the waffles," I reassured softly. Later, as I relaxed in my lazy boy watching the Cubs game, the bedroom door slammed open and a frantic Hester stormed in, ranting incoherently. "Calm down, honey. I can't understand you with all the drooling and spitting," I remarked. She sobbed, accusing me of making her seem promiscuous to her parents. "What's a Kardashian, Mommy?" Elise asked, joining the scene. I exchanged a glance with Hester, who composed herself and sent the kids to their rooms before confronting me. "Tell me," she demanded as soon as the kids were out of earshot. "I saw no reason to hide it from your parents since you were just following a senator to a fundraiser," I explained. "If they agree with me, it's not my fault. And by the way, my mom had a similar reaction, so watch out next time she's near." "No, it's not like that," she began, then stopped abruptly. "An amazing experience," I interjected. "If looks could eliminate, I'd be a stain on the chair. But it doesn't bother me much." I gestured for her to move so I could see the TV before she hurried out of the room. For the following 2 weeks, I slept in the guest room. Noticing this, I told the kids that I had a cold and didn't want their mother to catch it. I assumed Eliza had figured out my deception, but she prudently kept it to herself without saying anything. A 7-year-old child demonstrates impressive intelligence. One night, an hour after Hess had gone upstairs, I returned to our sharing bed and softly climbed into her. When the alarm went off the next morning, she snuggled up next to me. "It feels great," she muttered. "It's time to come to your senses." She attempted to touch me. I stopped her by placing my hand on her forearm and drawing her hand away. I adjusted our position so that we were facing each other on the bed. "Certain acts are best performed when you can make direct eye contact. Before I decide to sleep with you again, you will have to get tested and provide me with the results," I said softly. "You could be willing to trust Senator, but I am not." Tears welled in her eyes. She appeared to be about to say something, but then decided not to. Instead, she simply nodded. It revealed to me that she and the senator were not using protection. The scenario is growing very intriguing. Originally, I planned to stay until the kids finished high school, roughly another 14 years until Nate headed to college. My love for them made me willing to endure, but the prospect of long-term closeness absence, especially with an attractive woman under the same roof, seemed untenable. Despite concerns about my reputation, my feelings for her had dwindled over the past 2 weeks. Seeing her leave the bed with sadness no longer stirred me as it once did. My own pain prevented me from offering comfort. Who was she now? The woman I married would have understood my disapproval of her seeing someone else. Hester and I met in college, started dating 3 months later, and married within 2 years. She worked as an actuary, a job requiring precision and honesty, traits that balanced my spontaneity and humor. Despite our differences, I envisioned celebrating 50 years of marriage. Senator Thomas Norberto unexpectedly became a part of our lives. 10 days after returning to our shared bed, Hester handed me an envelope as I came home from work. Inside was her clear bill of health. "Hope you're satisfied," she coldly whispered. "You have no idea how humiliating this was. I may never face Dr. Sanjay again." "Not my fault, baby," I replied plainly. "Stay faithful, and you won't be embarrassed." She hissed softly but couldn't retort. As she walked away, I pressed on. "How often has Senator contacted you?" She began, but I silenced her with a gesture. With a grimace, she handed over her phone. I found texts and calls from him, but no evidence of further meetings. "Damn it," I exclaimed. "We're on thin ice." "Agreed," she returned seriously, pocketing her phone and heading to the kitchen. That night, she showed me affection in bed, and instinct took over. I didn't have feelings for her, I just fulfilled my needs. I knew she tried to win me back, but I was preoccupied. Hester's abrupt return home sparked neighborhood gossip. Sympathetic looks from men and smirks from women hinted at rumors. One evening, Eliza approached me asking about a women's club. I kept my composure, explaining Mommy's mistake and reassuring her. I hugged her, concealing my emotions, knowing this moment would haunt me forever. A feeling of normality gradually returned to our household, at least as far as I could see. Yet, it was a different kind of normalcy. Whether Hessa admitted it or not, things would never revert to how they were before that day. I couldn't fully trust her again, nor could I forgive or forget the profound disrespect she had shown me and our family. Love. To borrow from Tina Turner, what does love have to do with any of this? 6 months later, he seemed to grasp something or find the courage to speak up. Following that evening, which she instigated, I turned away from her to sleep, as had become customary since then. Before she said anything, I could hear her crying. "Reggie? Reggie, can we talk?" "What's up?" she asked meekly. "Sure," I sighed. "Could you please turn around?" Her tone conveyed clear irritation as she inquired. I sighed again, trying to mask her frustration. Then I turned to meet her gaze. She kept glancing at my eyes. "Do you realize how long it's been since we were close? Say it." "I did say it," I insisted. "You had the courage to do it, have the bravery to admit it. We haven't been close since I went on a date." "I noticed," she said. "You satisfy me physically, then sleep. You ensure I'm happy, but it feels purely physical. And you haven't hugged me since. I miss that. Closeness? You can't even say those words." "Baby," I replied. "Your date? You cheated on me with him. Admit it, I'm not stupid. You go on a date and don't come back until the next day. You make it seem cheap and disgusting," she protested. "Yes, we were lovemaking on Saturday night, and it was great. He was gentle and caring, just like you. Really, it was an unforgettable experience. That's why we're not making love anymore. Yes, don't you see? You gave him something that, as you promised, was exclusively mine. And you enjoyed everything. It was unforgettable, as you said. Come on, Reg. It was only one night. 2 days. From a statistical standpoint, this is little compared to the hundreds of days we'll spend married. We can forget it, Reg, if you're willing to try," she pleaded. "Thanks for the math lesson, but I've never seen our marriage as a math problem. Would you feel the same if I did it with Mary Jo Young? Mary Jo Young, a divorced blonde with a nice figure, lives close by. Almost every woman on our street watches her closely with her husband." "Wait, are you suggesting you want Mary Jo? No way," she exclaimed. "Listen to your inner voice." "I never said I wanted Mary Jo. That was you. I was just wondering how you'd react if I did," I clarified. She looked puzzled until it clicked. Then her expression turned angry. "I can read between the lines. No need for words," I replied smugly. She avoided eye contact. "Do you realize, because of what happened, the other girls in the neighborhood bullied Eliza? They overheard their mothers calling you names. It wasn't pleasant," I informed her. Her anger shifted to disbelief at the news. "Eliza never mentioned it." She took a breath, processing. "I'm truly sorry." "Sorry isn't enough. You call the night unforgettable. It was unforgettable, but for betrayal," I declared. With that, I turned away and went to bed, unaware of her next move. Credit is due to Hester. Over the next few months, she committed herself to being an exceptional mother. Traditionally, I had been the primary caregiver for our children. But suddenly, Hester took on her share of responsibilities, driving the kids to their various activities and offering them warm support. It made me wonder if she had finally realized that prioritizing our family over her own desires was essential to keeping us together. What a revelation. The children seemed to appreciate the extra attention, but once again, my daughter demonstrated her remarkable perceptiveness beyond her 8 years. "Mom is really trying, Daddy," she said to me one day. "I hope she gets a proper apology for whatever she did wrong." I tried to respond with a genuine smile, acknowledging her keen awareness of the world around her. Everything appeared normal in the Wilkerson household. I worked diligently to maintain appearances. As for Hester, she seemed eager to make tremendous efforts, not only to uphold appearances, but also to regain my favor. We were 2 individuals sharing a roof and enjoying certain benefits. Despite her strong desire for normalcy, she expected me to give in eventually. Somewhere within me, remnants of my affection for her remained. However, I couldn't erase 9 years of having her as the focal point of my life. She made things harder for herself by maintaining communication with Senator Prick. I checked her phone calls and messages shortly after her date. She made sure they were clear. Yet she didn't realize how easy it was to clone a phone and access all communications. He seemed to keep in touch regularly, while she tried to keep him at arm's length, at least for now. "Can we schedule another date soon?" "I'll be in town," he texted nearly a month ago. "My hubby is still upset from last time," she replied. "I can't risk it." Needless to say, I wasn't impressed. A month later, we marked our 10th anniversary with a family trip to Chuck E. Cheese. The kids had a blast, but Hester didn't. She waited until the kids were playing games before expressing her disappointment with me. "We've always marked our anniversaries, just the 2 of us, with a special night. You're altering tradition because you're still holding a grudge? When did you become so petty and small?" she remarked once more. The answer to that question is similar to many others about your date. You did this to me, to us, and to yourself. I replied. "Can't you move past this?" she pleaded. "How often do you two communicate?" I asked directly. She dared to smirk before reaching into her pocket, retrieving her phone and handing it to me. I tossed it high into the air and caught it easily when it fell. "I understand you've been disloyal, but I also acknowledge your intelligence. I bet there's no evidence of your affair on that phone, not since I confiscated it the first time. However, there are records of past texts and calls that you may not have initiated, but I've never heard you explicitly reject the person. Why is that?" Her cheeks flushed as she looked away. "Yes, I knew that was a rhetorical question," I muttered. Amidst this turmoil, my career and my children provided stability. Though my colleagues often remarked that I looked like I needed a good night's sleep or even 6, I was convinced I was developing an ulcer. My hard drinks consumption had increased, and sleep was elusive. There were nights when I lay awake for hours, staring at my wife, wondering what went wrong. She insisted on loving me, justifying her actions as separate from our relationship. She felt entitled to her night out with Senator Prick and showed no guilt for her behavior, only regret for the injury she caused me. I waited for the other shoe to drop. Surprisingly, my mother-in-law became a source of strength during this challenging time. She repeatedly expressed regret for her daughter's actions. "We apologize, Reggie. We didn't raise her to be this selfish, but I really hope you can find a way to move past this." During one of her calls to check on me, she said, "I know what you're doing for the children." As I headed to the kitchen, I grabbed another cooler of beer to take outside. We were having our usual monthly summer picnic in the neighborhood. Outside, we had 2 grills going, offering a variety of hot and cold dishes, fruits, desserts, and drinks. The weather was perfect, sunny, and 80 degrees Fahrenheit with hardly a breeze. The gathering had started a few hours ago and was expected to continue for another 5 or 6. These gatherings were always enjoyable for both kids and adults alike. As I moved through the house, I heard female voices from our home office, typically off limits to non-family. I intended to redirect them to the family room or living area. While most activity happened outside, sometimes someone sought refuge indoors for AC or quiet talks. However, this particular space posed a problem. Yeah, when Reggie takes charge, I can't help but think of him. He's assertive, driven, and focused on his goals. Sometimes I can't shake the memory of that night. It's something I'll cherish forever, Hester declared to her companion as I approached the room. I halted in my tracks, my legs weakening, almost stumbling. "Damn, how many people know I'm being betrayed?" I heard laughter. Apparently there were 3 of them inside. I missed the rest of the conversation as I fought the urge to vomit. I was relieved to reach the restroom before getting sick, emptying everything from the night before, breakfast, and lunch. After tidying up, I brought the cooler of beer outside and gave 2 bottles to the guys manning the grills. "Hey, Reg, you all right? You seem a bit off," said John Lasky, casually concerned. "John, I'm good," I replied before drifting away. I stayed quiet for the rest of the gathering. When Hester and her friends returned, I felt eyes on me and noticed smirks aimed my way. Maybe I was losing it, but it seemed like almost every woman at the BBQ was sneering at me. Later that night, after putting the kids to bed and finishing the cleanup, I confronted my wife about my discomfort. She sat on a lounge chair, sipping a wine cooler, looking content. I joined her. "Did anyone show up today who doesn't know about your affair?" I asked sincerely. She looked taken aback. I returned her gaze, pretending innocence. "I might have mentioned it to a couple girlfriends recently. It was quite the experience," she chuckled. "He's a charming senator," I couldn't help but share. "So first you cheat, then you embarrass me in front of your friends, making every husband aware of your infidelity and branding me as a betrayed," I accused. "I'm not unfaithful, and I won't tolerate being labeled as such," she yelled back. "It was just one mistake. I didn't sleep with a stranger in some seedy motel." Her eyes flashed with intensity as she rose from her chaise lounge. "I've had enough of this," she declared, her voice growing louder. "You've been playing games for over a year now. Your wife had an affair with another man, a handsome and muscular man. It's time to move forward. I won't be held hostage by your insecurities any longer. If you can't let go, that's your problem. Either file for divorce or face reality. I'm tired of living a lie with you, pretending to be the perfect couple. Decide now." Her outburst caught me off guard, and I sat in stunned silence for what felt like hours. She had already walked away, leaving me alone, even though I had just regained consciousness. I'm naturally reserved and slow to react, which some, including my wife, interpret as weakness. I seldom panic or act hastily. It pains me to think about not seeing my children every day, but I'm hopeful to salvage my family. I had braced myself for the worst, with a lawyer on standby to fight for me, so I took action. First thing Monday morning, Hester was served with divorce papers at her workplace before the day was out. As expected, she was not pleased. About 5 minutes after being served, my phone began buzzing incessantly. Ignoring all her calls, I anticipated the brewing storm upon my return home. Stepping into the house from the garage, Hester exploded in anger. "You fool!" she shouted. "Your fragile male ego is bruised and you humiliate me in front of my colleagues." "Just as you embarrassed us in front of our friends and neighbors the other day," I retorted. "You practically begged me to file." "So I did." She shot me a scornful look but remained silent. Putting down my belongings, I approached my children for a brief chat, reassuring them of my unwavering love despite us no longer sharing a home starting tomorrow. Elise grasped the situation, having friends with divorced parents, but Nate seemed puzzled. I knew he would struggle, but I was confident my daughter would lend support. Living in a no-fault state made the divorce process seem straightforward. She was expected to receive primary custody of the children, the house, child support, and some alimony. But no, she vehemently contested. For some inexplicable reason known only to her, her lawyer employed various tactics to prolong the proceedings, including insisting on meetings and even suggesting marital counseling. "What's the deal? Have your actions spoken louder than your words? You say you love me, yet you've caused so much turmoil. And then you have the nerve to tell your friends he's the best you've ever had. Why would I want to remain in this marriage if all I get is aggravation? I love my kids, but if I stay with you, they'll only remember an embittered man," I expressed in one session. "But I love you, Reg. Are you fixated on one incident?" "Yes, he was exceptional, but it was a one-time mistake. Please forgive me," she pleaded. "I can't, Hess," I replied. "You broke our vows and belittled their importance. I can't overlook that. You made promises to me. I hadn't planned to do this. Truly, I hadn't, but everyone has a breaking point." The beauty of a two-party political system lies in its contrast. Regardless of how you spin it, Senator Prick belonged to one side, meaning the opposing party would welcome anything that tarnished his reputation over a year ago. After Hester's affair, I devised a backup plan. I sought the help of a well-connected lawyer in our city to approach the chairman of the opposing political party, who was eager for anything that could damage the senator's chances of re-election and White House aspirations. Despite promising a hefty monetary reward, they eagerly awaited the information. He had to agree that the evidence would only be revealed if the possessor requested it. Every month, my lawyer kept me informed about the chairman's persistent requests. This month, we were ready to fulfill the chairman's demands. The meeting, my first involvement, was set in my lawyer's office. After introductions, I took out a sealed plastic bag from my briefcase and placed it on the conference table. The chairman's surprise was evident upon seeing the bag's contents. "Dear God," he muttered. "Is that what I think it is?" "If you suspect it's evidence that could end Senator Prick's career," I replied, "then yes." They regarded the bag as if it held precious gold bars. He refrained from touching it, instead continuing to stare in amazement. "That arrogant woman returned home and went upstairs for a shower," I recounted. "Since she handles the laundry, she probably assumed I wouldn't go through the basket." I waited until I heard the water running before entering the bathroom and finding the underwear at the bottom of the hamper. Everyone these days is familiar with DNA from television. I'm confident that when you test these, you'll find two distinct sets. Also, here's her toothbrush for DNA comparisons. I assume you'll obtain the senator's sample for matching, unless you already have it, I said, giving the chairman a stern look. He reddened and glanced away, just as I anticipated. I knew he grasped all the complexities of the case, so there was no need to reiterate them. However, I sensed his unspoken question in his expression. Why? Because she lacks the intelligence to realize she shouldn't cross me. She betrayed me, yet she arrogantly assumes I'll eventually forgive her. Now she's flaunting it in front of me. To hell with her and the senators she associates with, I declared. Your career is finished, Thomas. Damn you, Norberto, you foolish woman. How on earth could your weak husband obtain evidence of our weekend together? I suspected he was aware, but there was evidence. How Norberto raged at Hester on the phone a week after my meeting with the chairman, I do not know. I have no clue what you're talking about, she faltered. The phone call caught me off guard. I used to clone hers. I essentially admitted to her that I had tapped her phone some months ago and that they hadn't been communicating through that means, if at all. What did you do wrong? She asked when I returned her call 90 minutes later. I understood what she meant, but I was feeling vengeful, or so I thought. I just ordered a pepperoni pizza with garlic bread. Why do you care what I eat? Wait, how do you know what I eat? She snapped at me. From past encounters, I could tell she despised my foolish actions. While she may have seemed to view me as feeble, she knew better. Well, I guess being right about one thing out of two wasn't too bad. I'm not sure how you managed it, but it seems you got back at Senator Norberto in some way. He threatened to rough me up for something you did, though he wouldn't say what. Thanks, by the way, my parents are livid. Yours are too. Elise has been avoiding me, and you can't seem to grasp that what Thomas and I did was unrelated to our relationship. Yes, about that, I started. Senator Norberto, who was seemingly assured of retaining his seat, suddenly dropped out of the Senate race 8 months before the election, citing significant mental fatigue. With everything else going on in my life, seeking female companionship was the least of my concerns. I hadn't looked at a woman in an appealing way for months until my daughter brought it up. Daddy, when do you plan to start seeing other women? Elise asked casually. My children joined me for the second weekend. Linda's mom really wants to go out with you. I was stunned. My jaw must have dropped. Lost in the chaos of divorce, I hadn't thought much about my future beyond taking care of my kids. Every other weekend and a few weeks during the summer, Linda's mom brought it up. And you're okay with that? I asked, surprised. Well, she didn't directly tell me, Dad. Elise revealed she overheard her talking with Annie's mom, but yeah, I'd be fine with it. Dad, I don't want you to be alone, but please, not Marcy's mom. None of us kids liked her. Kids pick up on things, Dad. Linda's mom had been divorced from her for about 5 years. I had a terrible husband. She was a charming, lively blonde with curves who still carried the spirited vibe of her old cheerleading days. I had never considered she might be interested in me. When you're married, you don't think about other women's possibilities. At least I didn't. Was I naive? Elise was quietly keeping an eye on me. It's okay, Dad. I'm almost 9. I understand about divorce and all. Nate and I will be fine. Just take care of yourself. It seemed like I was back in the dating scene. Linda's mom, Julie, became my first date after re-entering the dating pool, and it felt nice, though somewhat obligatory. I explained to her that emotionally, I wasn't ready for anything serious yet, considering my recent return to dating. She responded with a comforting smile, telling me I didn't owe an explanation to every person I dated. Julie offered valuable advice, almost like a crash course on navigating life with divorced parents. She also mentioned that I would catch the eye of other divorced moms among my children's friends, given my reputation as a good father with a successful career and, well, not unattractive. She blushed a bit when she mentioned the last part. I went on to date Julie and a few other divorced mothers. Sometimes I hardly thought about my ex-wife, Hester, or our past marriage. While I admitted to feeling lonely at times, it wasn't enough to consider reconciling with her. I refused to entertain the idea of her betraying me again. Hester, however, quickly dismissed her affair as a foolish mistake, promising never to repeat it. A foolish mistake? I scoffed. It was poor judgment, a lack of respect, and ultimately selfishness. You prioritized an affair with the senator over your family's well-being? Her mouth opened and closed twice. I sensed her desire to respond, but she remained speechless. I half expected her to persist, despite the fact that she couldn't justify her actions, especially now that contacting the senator seemed pointless. One Saturday during dinner while the kids and I were visiting, my ex-mother-in-law informed me that he had asked her never to contact him again. He seemed to think you played a role in his decision to withdraw from the Senate election, and that she didn't intervene enough, she recounted. I raised an eyebrow and continued eating quietly, opting not to comment. A few months later, some guys from work suggested going to a new upscale bar with a dance floor. When I was married, I avoided Thursday evening outings like the plague, but now that I'm single, I find myself going out regularly. 4 of us found a table, ordered drinks, and soaked in the atmosphere of the place. I noticed the 2 women as soon as they walked in. The first woman looked to be in her early 40s, but dressed more in line with individuals over 30, aiming to evoke a youthful vibe. She wore a silk blue shirt, slightly unbuttoned, and a short skirt accentuating her long, toned legs. With short, dark brown hair and green eyes, she seemed brimming with confidence. On the other hand, her friend seemed out of place in the pub setting. Slightly older than her companion, possibly in her early 40s, she exuded refinement and wealth. Clad in a sweater and skirt from a high-end store, she radiated elegance and beauty with her shoulder-length silver blonde hair and dark eyes. Seating themselves at a nearby table, the women quickly caught the attention of males eager to engage or dance with them. I couldn't shake the desire to dance with one of them. Particularly the dark-haired woman seemed ready for some fun, if not more. She readily accepted dances from every man who approached her. In contrast, the blonde woman danced sparingly and seemed more reserved in her movements. An hour later, I resolved to invite the blonde woman to dance. However, as I approached her table, the brunette grabbed my hand and whisked me onto the dance floor. I became completely captivated by her and forgot about her companion. We danced to upbeat songs until the tempo slowed. When she passionately kissed me, I was entranced. We left the club together and went to my place. Our passion carried over into the bedroom, and that night she shared details of her life. It turned out she and her friend were celebrating her recent divorce. Rosie proved to be an amazing lover, and we dated for about a month before she expressed hesitancy to commit so soon after her divorce. I respected her perspective, and we parted amicably. However, since our initial encounter, I've never had the chance to inquire about her friend, which sparked my curiosity. A few weeks later, I found myself alone in the bar of another upscale establishment, seeking solace with a drink. It wasn't my turn to care for the children after a long week, so I had the weekend to myself. She entered the room solo, capturing everyone's attention. Her figure resembled Megan from Stallion, with a cascade of rich brown locks framing her face and draping over her shoulders. Striding over in 4-inch stilettos, she settled next to me. Instantly, I felt like I'd stepped into heaven. I scrambled for a clever opening line, but before I could speak, she gazed into my eyes and asked for my drink order. I replied with a sly grin, feeling a twinge of envy at her poise, and my thoughts scattered. "Excellent choice," she purred. "A man with impeccable taste." Ordering the same undiluted drink as mine, she spent the evening sharing about the boutique marketing company she founded years ago. Remarkable. Not only was she captivating and intelligent, but she also ran a thriving business. Later, we departed for her charming apartment. She mentioned her preference for lovemaking in her own bed, a common sentiment among women, and delved into the psychology behind it. With her impeccably toned physique, I couldn't believe she was 45. Our first encounter was unforgettable. She was an exceptional kisser, and I felt a connection with her unlike any since my date with Hester. In just one night, Maria Washington opened up to me more honestly than Hester ever had. During our 9-year marriage, Maria confessed her dedication to her career and lack of desire for children, preferring casual relationships with various men. Despite developing genuine feelings for her, knowing a traditional relationship wasn't an option, I agreed to be friends with benefits for the next year. We met monthly until Marielle unexpectedly fell in love with a much younger man. "You're one lucky guy," my ex-mother-in-law would occasionally call me. Despite the divorce, we remained close, bound by mutual understanding and our grandchildren. I still referred to them as Mom and Dad. "Could I ask you a favor, Reg?" she inquired cautiously. "Of course, as long as it doesn't involve your daughter," I replied. It was a matter of courtesy to take my mother-in-law's request to bring her personal assistant to their upcoming company Christmas party seriously. She's a good-hearted person, Reg. She went through a divorce a few years ago from an abusive cheater, and I don't think she's dated anyone since. She was hurt, Reg, and she needs a decent guy to show her that not all men are scoundrels. And I think you're a decent guy, my ex-mother-in-law explained. Isn't it odd when your former mother-in-law tries to set you up on a date? Just one thing, Mom, I interjected. Please tell me she's not boring. Mom caught on to the humor and chuckled. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, Reggie. You might even let us keep the kids for a night or two, she teased. Mom was spot on. I was pleasantly surprised. Cheryl, or Sherilyn as she preferred, was a delightful bundle of charm with a well-proportioned figure. She was warm without being overly effusive, and she had a delightful habit of wrinkling her nose and squinting her green eyes when she was amused. Equally important, she had a genuinely great personality. I made a point of sticking close to Sherilyn throughout the evening, giving her my full attention, much like I would have with my ex-wife. Sherilyn seemed appreciative of the gesture. While she engaged in conversation, she tended to defer to others, which I suppose was understandable given her upbringing. We sat with my in-laws at a table. Mom was as graceful as ever, while Dad was more reserved. At first I understood his demeanor, but he grew more open as the evening progressed. I surprised Jerry with my dancing skills, which I had honed to please my ex-wife, Hester, who loved to dance. Sherilyn also demonstrated proficiency, especially in faster dances. And she complimented me perfectly in slow dances, as if we had been dancing together for years. I savored the feeling of her body against mine as I escorted Sherilyn to the door. She gave me a gentle kiss on the lips and handed me her phone number. I realized I owed my in-laws more time with their grandchildren. After 3 days, I called Sherilyn to ask her out. She agreed to a date the following Friday at one of the city's finest Italian restaurants, followed by an art exhibit at a nearby gallery. Sherilyn dressed more provocatively for our date than she did at the Christmas party, which impressed me even more. We had a wonderful time, and we went out 3 more times before I felt it was time for her to meet my 8-year-old daughter and for me to meet hers. We spent quality time together, playing mini-golf and enjoying a picnic in a nearby park. Overall, I felt it went smoothly, particularly because the 2 girls developed a strong bond. However, as expected for his age, my kid wasn't thrilled because he believed all girls had cooties. Sherry and I met several times a week, and when I had my children, we engaged in family activities together, including all 5 of us. Everything was going well until a few weeks into the new school year, when I received an unexpected phone call from Hester. "I'm not sure what your girlfriend has been teaching my kids, but your son was in the principal's office today for fighting, and his face is all beaten up. He's been suspended for 3 days, and all he can say is that it all started with this Monique girl he keeps calling his sister," she raged over the phone. "First and foremost, you have no right to call my girlfriend names like that. I'll come over after dinner and take Nate out for ice cream. Let's not jump to conclusions until we know exactly what happened," I responded calmly. I heard her sigh before she hung up. After dinner, I picked up Nate and took him to a small, family-owned ice cream parlor. As soon as he got into my car, I conducted a thorough visual inspection. He had a cut on his lip and a scratch on the left side of his face. He joked, "You should see the other guy, Dad." "What's the truth, Nathan Abraham?" I responded with his full name to emphasize seriousness. He winced at the mention of his first and middle names. "A kid was bullying Mo, Dad. I told him to leave my sister alone. He threw the first punch. Then I punch him hard. They say I broke his nose. It made a loud crack, and there was blood everywhere," he explained, trying to hide a grin. "The boy who bothered Mo was 2 years older than Nate. Will Mo tell me the same story?" I asked. "Absolutely, Dad. I wouldn't have punched him if he hadn't thrown the first punch. I was just defending Mo. You always tell me to look out for Allie, so I figured it applied to Mo too." "She's really small, Dad," Nate said. Nate had a valid point. Monique inherited her mother's petite stature, making her at least half a head shorter than most of her peers. I had always stressed to Nate the importance of looking out for his sister, and it seemed he now saw Monique as part of his family. It was fascinating how the innocence of childhood sometimes outweighed the wisdom of experience. "I commend you for protecting Mo, but let's keep it between us," I told him. "I'll speak with the principal and see what can be done. You might want to update your mother on Mo's status. It seems you and Elise haven't been keeping her fully informed about my life, which I appreciate. However, it might be better coming from you and Elise," I said. I mentioned that my 7-year-old understood completely. Children mature quite quickly these days. "And Dad, when are you and Sherry tying the knot? She's amazing, you know," he added. As I mentioned earlier, kids grow up fast, and he was right. It was time to make a commitment to that woman. The following day, I reached out to the principal. The school had a strict zero-tolerance policy for fighting, regardless of whether it was self-defense. However, they also had a zero-tolerance policy for bullying. As a result, the aggressor received a 6-day suspension following interviews with witnesses. Although I disagreed with the policy, I advised him not to contest his punishment manually. Furthermore, I assured him of my support and promised to propose to Sherry as soon as I could afford the ring. Things got complicated when Hester discovered Sherry was Mom's personal assistant and that Mom had scheduled their first meeting. "What on earth, Mom? Aren't you supposed to be on my side?" Hester yelled later. "According to Mom, there's no your side," Mom replied. "He's not coming back to you. You completely messed that up. So why let a good man go to waste? Carolyn is a wonderful woman and a great friend. She deserves someone like Reggie." Mom described Hester's scream as horrifying as she recounted the incident. While both my children enjoyed Sherry's company, my daughter in particular seemed to admire her nurturing demeanor towards me. Sherry had a natural inclination to fulfill my desires, making me feel like the master of my domain. This, in turn, encouraged me to treat her like my queen. Elise seemed to enjoy witnessing the affectionate banter between Sherry and me. "I'm not sure if you two are endearing or nauseating," Elise remarked one day, "but I enjoy being around to witness it." A couple of months later, our lovemaking wedding only included our 3 children, my parents, and my ex-in-laws as guests. The court clerk who officiated the ceremony was surprised when my ex-mother-in-law stood as Sherry's maid of honor. "It's quite a story," I chuckled when she inquired. "Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition to come from the classic British comedy ensemble Monty Python's Flying Circus. But truth be told, nobody expects an inquiry from a federal marshal either." I was taken completely by surprise when two officials entered my office on a Monday morning. It seemed the authorities were upset about a certain former senator's altercation and subsequent injury in the restroom of an upscale restaurant in Houston, Texas. My name, along with that of several other aggrieved husbands, emerged as potential suspects. I can't say I'm sorry to hear about the senator's troubles. Nobody, and I truly mean that, deserves it more, I remarked to the disgruntled marshals. "You do realize that the fool slept with my then-wife almost 4 years ago. If I had any intentions, wouldn't I have acted long before now?" I retorted with heavy sarcasm. However, the grilling from the federal agents was just the beginning. A week later, a reporter from the Associated Press showed up at my office seeking details about the aforementioned incident. It appeared he had somehow obtained a confidential roster of 26 women the senator allegedly had affairs with during his time in office. At this point, several individuals were aware of Hester's rendezvous with the senator. Though I certainly didn't publicize it over the years, Hester likely disclosed it to more people than I did. As she took pride in her achievement, however, I couldn't help but wonder about her level of pride when news of the senator's misconduct emerged, implicating her as one of his lovers. "Why did you disclose that to him?" she practically yelled at me over the phone. "I didn't. He informed me that your name was on the senator's roster. All I did was confirm the accuracy of your inclusion on the list. I wasn't going to fabricate to spare you from embarrassment." "Promiscuous. I am not promiscuous," she screamed at me before I ended the call. I must confess I chuckled. I also entertained the thought of taking an extended vacation out of town when the news article broke. She messed up, literally. And yet I was going to suffer an embarrassing fallout as well. Cherry talked me out of that notion. "Don't engage in any confrontation. Stick to the truth. She cheated on you, divorced her. Move on," Cherry advised. Unfortunately, my children were going to endure verbal bullying for the remainder of their school years. We would be addressing the fact that their mother was a self-centered cheater for years to come. I also sympathized greatly with my ex-in-laws, who had become close friends of ours. After the article came out, we invited them to stay with us in the house we had purchased for a couple of weeks. During that time, they mostly stayed indoors and avoided answering their phones. I adore my daughter. You grasp the parental emotions, but I'm deeply ashamed that she thought it acceptable to engage in promiscuous behavior, Dad confessed. No father wants his daughter to be perceived in that manner. As time elapsed, the scandal dissipated, and life resumed its usual course. Gradually, my children began spending more time with Cherry, Mo, and me at our house. It wasn't formal, but our home naturally evolved into the neighborhood kids' gathering spot. Initially, Hester objected, but I believe things smoothed over. Furthermore, I ensured Elise and Nate maintained open communication with Hester to prevent her from accusing me of alienating her children again. Mom and Dad's frequent visits helped alleviate tensions. When the kids were with me, we seldom discussed Hester. Although she remained their mother, she became an ex in my life. They also refrained from mentioning her out of respect for Sherry, whom they now referred to as Mom. Initially, I sensed discomfort from Hester's parents when the kids started calling Cherry Mom, but that soon faded as they had been close to Cherry even before our marriage. Amidst the upheaval in my life and my family's, I paid scant attention to Hester's affairs. I knew she occasionally dated based on the kids' remarks, but I was startled when Elise announced one afternoon that her mother was engaged. A wave of sadness engulfed me for what might have been. Then, I felt a comforting embrace envelop me, and my sorrow swiftly transformed into joy for what I now possessed.
Owen Reeves woke to the familiar beeping of his alarm clock. 5:30 a.m., like clockwork. He rolled over, his calloused hand reaching for Lydia's warmth, but found only cool sheets. She must have gotten up early again. Pushing himself out of bed, Owen padded to the kitchen. The coffee maker hummed, a fresh pot already brewed. A yellow sticky note clung to the counter. Early meeting. See you tonight. Owen frowned, pouring himself a cup. These early mornings were becoming more frequent. As he sipped the bitter liquid, he noticed Lydia's favorite mug in the sink, a hint of red lipstick on the rim. She never wore lipstick to work before. The front door opened, and Lydia rushed in, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Oh, you're up," she said, slightly breathless. I forgot my presentation notes. Owen leaned against the counter, taking in her appearance. A new blouse, form-fitting and low-cut. Her hair was styled differently, and yes, that was definitely red lipstick. Big meeting, he asked. Lydia nodded, rifling through papers on the dining room table. Huge. Could mean a promotion if it goes well. She found what she was looking for and stuffed it into her briefcase. Don't wait up tonight. Drinks with the team, after to celebrate or commiserate. Before Owen could respond, she was out the door again. He watched through the window as she climbed into her car and sped away. Something fell off, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Later that day, Owen stood on the scaffolding of his latest project, overseeing the installation of support beams. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was Derek. Hey man, got a minute? Derek's voice was tight, uncomfortable. What's up? Owen asked, stepping away from the noise. Look, I don't want to cause trouble, but I saw Lydia last night. Owen's grip tightened on his phone. Yeah? Where? At Chez Pierre. You know, that fancy French place downtown. Owen's jaw clenched. They talked about trying that place for their anniversary next month. Said it was too expensive for a regular night out. She wasn't alone, Owen. The world seemed to tilt beneath Owen's feet. Who was she with? Derek hesitated. Some suit. Tall guy. Dark hair. They looked close. Owen's free hand curled into a fist. Thanks for telling me, Derek. I gotta go. He hung up, his mind racing. It could be innocent. A work dinner. A client meeting. But deep down, Owen knew. The lipstick. The new clothes. The constant meetings and late nights. That evening, Owen sat in the darkened living room, waiting. It was nearly midnight when he heard Lydia's key in the lock. She stumbled slightly as she entered, giggling to herself. Oh, she exclaimed, startled to see Owen. You're still up. How was your meeting? Owen asked, his voice carefully neutral. Lydia's smile faltered for a moment. Good. Great, actually. We landed the account. Congratulations, Owen said. Must have been some celebration. Lydia's eyes narrowed slightly. What's that supposed to mean? Owen stood, closing the distance between them. He could smell alcohol on her breath, mixed with a cologne that wasn't his. You smell nice, he said softly. New perfume. Lydia took a step back. I should get to bed. Early start tomorrow. As she turned to leave, Owen caught her wrist. Who is he, Lydia? She froze, her back to him. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, Owen growled. I know something's going on. Who is he? Lydia wrenched her arm free, whirling to face him. There's no he, Owen. You're being paranoid. Am I? Owen's voice rose. The late nights, the new clothes, the secrets. Do you think I'm stupid? I think you're jealous, Lydia spat. I'm finally doing well at work, and you can't stand it. You want me to be that little housewife, don't you? Always here, always available. Owen reeled back as if he'd been slapped. That's not fair, Lydia. I've always supported your career. Have you? She laughed bitterly. Or have you just tolerated it because it didn't interfere with your life? They stared at each other, the air thick with tension. Finally, Owen spoke, his voice low and dangerous. If you're not happy, Lydia, there's the door. But don't you dare accuse me of holding you back. Lydia's eyes widened, filling with tears. For a moment, Owen thought she might confess, might apologize. Instead, she turned on her heel and stormed upstairs, slamming their bedroom door behind her. Owen sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. He'd known something was wrong, but hearing Lydia lie to his face, it made it real. Unbearable. The next morning, Lydia was gone before Owen woke up. He went through his day in a haze, replaying every moment of the past few months in his head. How long had this been going on? How had he missed the signs? That evening, he decided to follow her. He parked down the street from the bank, watching as employees filed out at closing time. Lydia emerged, looking around furtively before hurrying to her car. Owen tailed her carefully, his heart pounding as she pulled into the parking lot of an upscale hotel. A man was waiting for her, leaning against a sleek sports car. Tall, dark-haired, wearing an expensive suit. Owen watched as Lydia practically ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. The man, Nick, Owen would later learn kissed her deeply before opening the passenger door for her. Owen gripped his steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. He wanted to jump out to confront them both. But a cold, calculating part of his brain held him back. No, this required careful planning. He'd make them pay. Both of them. Days passed and Owen said nothing. He watched Lydia lie, watched her sneak around, all while playing the role of devoted husband. He gathered evidence, photos and text messages he'd surreptitiously copied from her phone. He was building a case, preparing for the moment he'd bring it all crashing down. The breaking point came on a Friday morning. Owen was in the kitchen when Lydia bustled in, overnight bag in hand. "I'm heading out for the weekend," she said, not quite meeting his eyes. "Girls' trip with some friends from work." Owen nodded, taking a sip of his coffee. "Have fun," he said mildly. Lydia hesitated, then added, "My friend Nick is giving me a ride to meet the others. He's outside now. Actually, do you want to meet him?" The mug in Owen's hand cracked, hot coffee spilling over his fingers. He set it down carefully, turning to face his wife. "If that man comes within a meter of this house," he said, his voice deadly calm, "I'll break his jaw. And if you leave with him now, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Lydia paled, taking a step back. "Owen, Get out," Owen interrupted. "Go. But know this. When you come back, your life as you know it will be over." For a moment, Lydia looked like she might argue. Then, lifting her chin defiantly, she turned and walked out the door. Owen watched through the window as she climbed into the waiting sports car. As they drove away, he pulled out his phone and dialed. "Derek, it's time. Let's take them down." The moment Lydia's car disappeared around the corner, Owen sprang into action. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he'd been holding onto for just this moment. Riley Hayes' office, a crisp voice answered. "This is Owen Reeves. I need to speak with Mr. Hayes immediately. It's about initiating divorce proceedings." There was a pause on the other end. "Mr. Hayes has an opening in an hour. Can you make it?" Owen glanced at his watch. "I'll be there." 45 minutes later, Owen sat across from Riley Hayes, a shark of a divorce lawyer known for leaving opposing parties with nothing but the clothes on their backs. "So, Mr. Reeves," Hayes began, leaning back in his leather chair. "Tell me why you're here." Owen's jaw clenched. "My wife is cheating on me. I want her to pay for it." Hayes nodded, his expression neutral. "And you have proof?" Owen pulled out his phone, sliding it across the desk. "Everything's there. Photos, text messages, hotel receipts. I've been gathering evidence for weeks." As Hayes scrolled through the phone, his eyebrows rose. "This is comprehensive. You've done half my job for me already." "I want it all," Owen said, his voice hard. "The house, the savings, everything. I don't care what it takes." Hayes set the phone down, studying Owen. "It won't be easy. Pennsylvania is an equitable distribution state. But with this evidence, we might be able to argue for a more favorable split. Are you prepared for a fight?" Owen leaned forward, his eyes cold. "Mr. Hayes, I'm prepared for war." Over the next few hours, Owen and Hayes hatched a plan. They would move swiftly, cutting off Lydia's access to their joint accounts and gathering more evidence of her infidelity. "What about her lover?" Hayes asked. "This Nick character, what do we know about him?" Owen shook his head. "Not much. He's some hotshot lawyer. Married, from what I've gathered." Hayes' eyes glinted. "Married, you say? That could be useful. If we can get his wife involved." "Find her," Owen said. "I want her to know exactly what kind of man she's married to." As Owen left Hayes' office, he felt a grim satisfaction. The wheels were in motion. Now, it was time to set the stage for Lydia's return. Back at home, Owen methodically packed up Lydia's belongings. Clothes, jewelry, personal items, all of it went into boxes. By nightfall, the house looked as if Lydia had never lived there at all. Just as he was taping up the last box, his phone rang. It was Derek. "Hey man, how are you holding up?" Derek's voice was thick with concern. Owen sighed. "I'm fine. Just finished packing up her stuff." "Damn," Derek whistled. "You're really doing this, huh?" "She made her choice," Owen said flatly. "Now she has to live with it." There was a pause on the other end. "Listen, some of the guys and I are grabbing a beer. Why don't you join us?" Owen hesitated. The thought of facing people, of having to explain, but then he realized he had nothing to be ashamed of. He wasn't the one who had broken their vows. You know what? I'll be there in 20. The bar was crowded, but Owen spotted Derek and a few other guys from the construction crew at a corner table. As he approached, conversations hushed. "Owen," Derek called, raising his beer. "Grab a seat, man." Owen slid into an empty chair, nodding at the others. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Finally, one of the guys, Mike, spoke up. "So, is it true? About Lydia?" Owen took a long pull from the beer Derek had pushed his way. "Yeah, it's true." "Shit, man," Mike shook his head. "I'm sorry. That's rough." "Don't be sorry," Owen said, his voice hard. "Be glad you're not in my shoes. Or hers." The guys exchanged glances. "What are you going to do?" "Another worker," Tom asked. Owen set his beer down with a thunk. "I'm going to take everything. The house, the money, her reputation. By the time I'm done, she'll wish she'd never met me." A heavy silence fell over the table. Derek cleared his throat. "You sure about this, Owen? I mean, I know she hurt you, but—" Owen's eyes flashed. "But what? You think I should forgive her? Pretend it never happened?" Derek held up his hands. "No, man. I've never seen you like this. It's not like you." The old Owen died the moment Lydia decided to fuck another man. Owen spat. "This is who I am now. And if any of you have a problem with that, you can join her on my shit list." The other men shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. Owen drained his beer and stood. "Thanks for the drink. I've got work to do." As he walked out of the bar, he could feel their eyes on his back. Let them stare. Let them whisper. He didn't care what anyone thought anymore. The next morning, Owen was at the bank the moment it opened. He approached the teller with a grim determination. "I need to freeze all joint accounts I share with my wife, Lydia Reeves," he said, sliding his ID across the counter. The teller, a young woman with a nervous smile, tapped at her computer. Mr. Reeves, that's a pretty big request." "Are you sure?" Owen cut her off. "I'm sure, and I need it done now." I'll need to get a manager," she stammered. "Then get one," Owen snapped. Minutes later, a middle-aged man in a crisp suit approached. "Mr. Reeves? I'm Mr. Johnson, the branch manager. Is there a problem?" Owen fixed him with a steely gaze. "The problem is my wife is cheating on me, and I need to protect my assets. Now, are you going to help me, or do I need to take my business elsewhere?" Mr. Johnson's eyes widened slightly, but he quickly composed himself. "Of course, Mr. Reeves. Let's step into my office, and we'll take care of this right away." An hour later, Owen walked out of the bank, a grim smile on his face. Lydia's financial lifeline had been cut. Now for the next phase of his plan. That afternoon, Owen sat in his car outside a modest suburban home. According to Hayes' investigator, this was where Hannah Brenner, Nick's wife, lived. Owen took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he was about to do. He approached the front door and rang the bell. A moment later, a petite woman with kind eyes answered. "Can I help you?" Owen cleared his throat. "Mrs. Brenner? My name is Owen Reeves. I need to talk to you about your husband." Hannah's brow furrowed. "Is Nick okay? Has something happened?" "He's fine," Owen said. "But you might want to sit down for this." Inside, Owen handed Hannah a manila envelope. "I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but your husband is having an affair with my wife." Hannah's hand shook as she opened the envelope, her face growing pale as she looked at the photos inside. "No," she whispered. "This can't be." "I'm afraid it is," Owen said softly. "I have text messages, hotel receipts. It's all there." Hannah looked up at him, tears in her eyes. Why? Why are you telling me this?" Owen met her gaze steadily. "Because you deserve to know the truth. And because I'm about to rain hell down on both of them. I thought you should be prepared." Hannah's expression hardened. "What are you going to do?" "Everything I can to make them pay," Owen said. "I'm filing for divorce. I'm going after Lydia's job, her reputation, everything. And Nick, well, I imagine a cheating scandal won't do much for his career." Hannah was quiet for a long moment. Then, to Owen's surprise, she reached out and squeezed his hand. "Thank you for telling me, Mr. Reeves. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some calls to make." As Owen left Hannah's house, he felt a mix of emotions. guilt for bringing pain to an innocent woman, but also a fierce satisfaction. The net was closing in. The next few days passed in a blur of legal meetings and financial maneuvering. Owen threw himself into his work, pushing his crew harder than ever. If anyone noticed the change in him, they were smart enough not to mention it. Finally, Sunday evening arrived. Owen sat in the darkened living room, waiting. At precisely 8:43 p.m., he heard a key in the lock. Lydia stepped inside, her weekend bag slung over her shoulder. She flipped on the light and froze, seeing Owen. "Oh," she said, her voice small. You're still up." Owen stood slowly. "Welcome home, Lydia. Have a nice weekend?" Lydia's eyes darted around the room, taking in the missing photos and the empty spaces where her things had been. "Owen, what save it?" Owen cut her off. "I know everything, Lydia. About Nick. About the affair. All of it." Lydia's face crumpled. "Owen, please, I can explain." "Explain?" Owen's laugh was bitter. "Explain how you've been fucking another man for months. How you lied to my face. Over and over." Tears spilled down Lydia's cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never meant for me to find out." Owen finished. "Well, guess what? I did. And now you're going to pay for it." Lydia's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Owen smiled, a cold, hard expression that made Lydia take a step back. "I've frozen our accounts. I'm filing for divorce. And I'm going to take everything, Lydia. The house, the savings, your reputation. By the time I'm done, you'll have nothing." "You can't do that," Lydia gasped. "Watch me," Owen growled. "Oh, and you might want to call your boyfriend. His wife knows too." All the color drained from Lydia's face. "No," she breathed. "Owen, please, we can work this out." "There's nothing to work out," Owen said, moving past her to the door. "Your things are in boxes on the porch. I suggest you find somewhere else to stay tonight." As he stepped outside, Lydia called after him, her voice breaking. "Owen, wait. Where are you going?" Owen turned, fixing her with a final, icy stare. "I'm going home. You're going to hell." With that, he walked away, leaving Lydia sobbing on the doorstep of the life she'd thrown away. The next morning, Owen woke early, his mind already racing with the day ahead. He'd barely slept, replaying Lydia's tearful pleas over and over in his head. But each time he felt a flicker of sympathy, he reminded himself of her betrayal. His phone buzzed a text from Derek. "You okay, man? Heard Lydia come back last night." Owen typed back, "I'm fine. It's done. Meeting with a lawyer again today." As he was getting ready to leave, another text came through. This one is from an unknown number. "It's Hannah Brenner. Can we meet? There's something you should know." Owen's curiosity piqued. He quickly replied, arranging to meet Hannah at a coffee shop near his office. An hour later, Owen sat across from Hannah, both clutching steaming cups of coffee. Hannah looked tired. Her eyes were red from crying. "Thank you for meeting me," Hannah said, her voice soft. I wanted to tell you what happened after you left yesterday." Owen leaned forward. "Go on." Hannah took a shaky breath. "I confronted Nick. He tried to deny it at first, but when I showed him the evidence," she trailed off, her hands tightening around her cup. "What did he say?" Owen prompted. "He broke down," Hannah said, a hint of disgust in her voice. "Begged me not to leave him. Said it was just a fling, that it didn't mean anything." Owen snorted. "And you believe that?" Hannah's eyes flashed. "Of course not. I told him I wanted a divorce. And then I called my father." Owen raised an eyebrow. "Your father? He's a senior partner at Nick's firm," Hannah explained. "I told him everything. By this morning, Nick had been asked to resign." A slow smile spread across Owen's face. "You destroyed his career." Hannah met his gaze steadily. "He destroyed our marriage. I just returned the favor." They sat in silence for a moment, two people united by shared betrayal. Finally, Owen spoke. "Thank you for telling me this. It helps?" Hannah nodded. "I thought you should know. And I wanted to ask, how are you handling things with Lydia?" Owen's jaw clenched. "I'm taking her for everything she's worth. House, savings, all of it." "Good," Hannah said firmly. "Make her pay." As they parted ways, Owen felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't alone in this fight. Later that day, Owen sat in Riley Hayes' office, listening as the lawyer laid out their strategy. "We've got a strong case for an uneven split of assets," Hayes was saying. "Given the evidence of infidelity and the fact that you've been the primary breadwinner." Owen cut him off. "I don't want an uneven split. I want it all." Hayes leaned back in his chair, studying Owen. "Mr. Reeves, I understand you're angry. But the courts, I don't care about the courts," Owen snapped. "I care about making her suffer, whatever it takes." Hayes sighed. "All right, we'll push for maximum damages. But I need to warn you, this could get ugly." Owen stood, his eyes cold. "It's already ugly, Mr. Hayes. I'm just returning the favor." As he left the office, Owen's phone rang. It was his foreman, Mike. "Boss, we got a problem at the site. One of the support beams isn't up to code. We need you here ASAP." Owen cursed under his breath. "I'm on my way." At the construction site, Owen threw himself into work, grateful for the distraction. He spent hours poring over blueprints, arguing with inspectors, and coordinating with his team. As the sun began to set, Derek approached him, looking concerned. "Owen, man, you've been at it for hours. Maybe it's time to call it a day." Owen wiped sweat from his brow. "I'm fine. There's still work to be done." Derek hesitated, then pressed on. "Look, I know you're going through a lot, but running yourself into the ground isn't going to help." Owen rounded on him. "You don't know anything about what I'm going through. So why don't you mind your own business?" Derek held up his hands. "Whoa, easy. I'm just trying to help." "I don't need help," Owen growled. "I need people to do their jobs and leave me alone." As Derek walked away, shaking his head, Owen felt a twinge of guilt, but he pushed it aside. He couldn't afford to show weakness now. Days turned into weeks. Owen threw himself into his work with a fervor that both impressed and worried his crew. The divorce proceedings dragged on, each meeting leaving Owen more determined to crush Lydia. One evening, as Owen was leaving the construction site, he spotted a familiar figure waiting by his truck. It was Lydia. She looked terrible, her clothes wrinkled, dark circles under her eyes. As Owen approached, she took a hesitant step forward. "Owen," she said, her voice trembling. "Please, can we talk?" Owen's face hardened. "We have nothing to talk about." Lydia reached out, grabbing his arm. "Please, just listen. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But this vendetta, it's destroying both of us." Owen yanked his arm away. "You destroyed us when you decided to fuck another man. Everything since then? That's on you." Tears spilled down Lydia's cheeks. "I'm sorry. God, Owen, I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make this right. Please, just tell me what I can do." For a moment, just a moment, Owen felt his resolve waver. Then he remembered the nights he'd spent alone, imagining Lydia in Nick's arms. "You want to know what you can do?" Owen's voice was ice. "You can lose everything. Your job, your friends, your dignity. You can feel what it's like to have your whole world ripped away. Then, maybe, you'll understand what you did to me." Lydia stumbled back as if she'd been slapped. "Owen, please." "Goodbye, Lydia," Owen said, climbing into his truck. As he drove away, he watched Lydia crumple to the ground in his rearview mirror. The next morning, Owen received a call from Riley Hayes. "Mr. Reeves, I have some news," the lawyer said, an undercurrent of excitement in his voice. Lydia's lawyer reached out. "They want to settle." Owen sat up straighter. "Settle? On what terms?" "They're offering to give you the house, the majority of the savings, basically everything we asked for," Hayes explained. "It seems your wife is eager to end this." A slow smile spread across Owen's face. "She's desperate." "Good. Tell them we'll consider it, but we want more." There was a pause on the other end. "Mr. Reeves, this is already a very favorable settlement. Pushing for more could backfire." "I don't care," Owen said firmly. "I want her to walk away with nothing. Make it happen." As the weeks passed, Owen watched with grim satisfaction as Lydia's life fell apart. Through the grapevine, he heard she'd lost her job at the bank apparently. Sleeping with clients was frowned upon. She was staying with her sister, Megan, who made no secret of her disgust with Lydia's actions. One day, as Owen was grabbing lunch at a deli near the construction site, he overheard a familiar voice. Peering around the corner, he saw Lydia sitting with another woman, April, if he remembered correctly. one of Lydia's co-workers from the bank. "I can't believe Nick did this to you," April was saying, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "After everything you went through." Lydia's shoulders sagged. "I was so stupid. I thought he loved me." April patted Lydia's hand. "Oh, honey, men like that don't love anyone but themselves." Owen leaned in closer, straining to hear. "I've lost everything," Lydia whispered. "My job, my marriage, my friends. And for what? A man who was sleeping with half the women at the bank." Owen's eyes widened. So Nick hadn't just been seeing Lydia. He'd been playing them all? As he watched, April's expression changed, a sly smile spreading across her face. "Well, not all of us were as naive as you, sweetie. Some of us knew exactly what we were getting into with Nick." Lydia's head snapped up. "What? You and Nick?" April laughed, a cruel sound. "Oh, don't act so shocked. Nick and I have been seeing each other for months, even before you came along." Lydia stood abruptly, her chair screeching against the floor. "You knew? You knew he was married, that he was seeing me, and you still—" April shrugged, examining her nails. "It's just business, Lydia. Some of us know how to play the game without losing everything." As Lydia fled the deli, tears streaming down her face, Owen felt a strange mix of emotions. Satisfaction at seeing Lydia suffer, yes, but also a twinge of pity. He pushed the feeling aside. There was no room for pity in his plan. The final nail in the coffin came a week later. Owen received a call from Riley Hayes. "It's done," the lawyer said. "Lydia's agreed to our terms. She's walking away with nothing but her personal belongings." Owen closed his eyes, letting the news wash over him. "It's over." "It's over," Hayes confirmed. "Congratulations, Mr. Reeves. You won." As Owen hung up the phone, he expected to feel elated, triumphant. Instead, he felt empty. He wandered through the house's house now, legally and completely. The rooms felt cavernous, echoing with memories of a life that no longer existed. Owen found himself in front of the mantel, staring at a photo he'd forgotten to take down. It was from their wedding day. Lydia was beaming, her eyes locked on his as they danced their first dance as husband and wife. For the first time since this all began, Owen allowed himself to really feel the loss. Not just of his wife, but of the future they'd planned together. The children they'd talked about having. The life they dreamed of building. A single tear slid down his cheek. He brushed it away angrily. No, he would mourn what Lydia had thrown away. He was better off without her. The next day, Owen threw himself into work with renewed vigor. He'd won a major contract to build a new luxury housing development. As he stood at the construction site, overseeing the early stages of the project, he felt a sense of purpose return. Derek approached, a blueprint in hand. "Hey, boss, got a minute?" Owen nodded, grateful for the distraction. "What's up?" As Derek explained a potential issue with the foundation plans, Owen found himself truly engaged for the first time in months. This was what mattered now. His work, his future. Weeks turned into months. The divorce was finalized, Lydia fading into a distant memory. Owen threw himself into his projects, his company flourishing under his renewed focus. One evening, as Owen was locking up the site office, he spotted a familiar figure waiting by his truck. It was Hannah Brenner. "Hannah," he said, surprised. "What are you doing here?" She smiled, a hint of nervousness in her eyes. "I hope you don't mind. I heard about your new development, and, well, I wanted to see how you were doing." Owen leaned against his truck. I'm okay. The divorce is final. Work is good." Hannah nodded. "And Lydia?" Owen shrugged. "Gone. Last I heard, she'd moved out of state. Started over somewhere new." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of shared experience hanging between them. Finally, Hannah spoke. "I'm glad you're doing well, Owen. You deserved better than what happened to you." Owen met her gaze. "So did you." Hannah smiled, a genuine expression that lit up her face. Maybe we both deserve a fresh start." As they stood there, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Owen felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time since Lydia's betrayal, he was ready to find out. Owen looked at Hannah, a small smile tugging at his lips. You know, I could use a break. Want to grab a coffee? Hannah's smile widened. I'd like that. As they walked away for the construction site, Owen glanced back one last time. The skeletal framework of the new development stood silhouetted against the darkening sky. A new beginning, rising from the ashes of the old. Owen turned back to Hannah, feeling lighter than he had in months. The past was behind him. The future, uncertain but full of possibility, lay ahead. And this time, he'd face it on his own terms.